Hey guys, this is Jim Fix, aka Fillmore. For those of you who love QF, a podcast about Howard Stern, and would like to donate some money, there's two ways now you can do it. You can join our Patreon page, which is listed in the graphic you're seeing now. But also, if you'd rather not do a subscription-based thing, even if it's $1 a month or what have you, you can use our PayPal account, which would be jimfix76@gmail.com. And you can donate whatever you like, however you like, one of those two ways, and we'd more than appreciate it if you'd like to do so. Thank you very much.
First of all, the nerve of your fucking ass to call me and tell me your fucking problem.
It's not my...
Fuck off. Get lost. Get off and take your stupid subscription and cancel. Who cares, Dina?
Fuck you.
Fuck you, cunt.
Fuck you.
Do your audience a favor.
Get lost. Don't do my audience. I'll do my audience whatever I want. I'll piss on this audience if I...
Douche.
I do have issues about people leaving me. I want to control everyone in my atmosphere. I am a puppet master, and I want everyone to be a puppet.
He was saying goodbye to me, and he leaned in for a kiss, and I smiled so big that he literally kissed my teeth. I cheated on every one of my boyfriends except for Howard.
For real?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
The day I met Howard, my cheating days ended.
You were a cheater?
I was a cheater.
I hate Beth. I think she's only after Howard's money, and she's a real horse face.
Can you bang any of those stripper broads on the show?
Teresa Lynn said you banged her.
Teresa who?
She was on here. She was in your movie, Private Parts.
Oh, Amy. No.
Teresa, the one with the little ass.
She never said that.
She told
That's
me.
a lie.
Oh.
To admit you're lying.
That's Tony. She told
Tony. Did I ever bang Teresa Lynn?
In New Jersey, welcome to the wrap-up show.
Does any of you gentlemen believe that Beth actually loves Howard?
Yeah, let's cut right to the nitty-gritty. Artie and I spent last weekend with him, and if she's in love, then she should get a fucking Oscar. If she's not in love, if she's in love, she should get an Oscar. Freudian slip.
See?
Uh-oh, here comes Beth. Howard is Beth. Howard is Beth. I'm knitting baby booties.
What are you doing, Beth?
I'm knitting baby booties. I could just see our blonde curly-haired son. At least you don't have to pretend your dog is actually a child.
Beth once even said to me, it was funny too, because Beth once said to me, you know, I wouldn't mind being engaged forever. Like this was, years ago. She goes, I just think the ring is so great. I would love to,
It's romantic.
And it's romantic, and it's kind of cool. But the second I popped the question, she was like, well, let's get on the phone and tell everyone we're getting married. I went, whoa.
Yeah.
No, we're not getting married. We're engaged.
There's no such thing.
You know what it is? I'm so self-important, I just don't even remember meeting anyone.
She was up here one day and I introduced you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What the people are
So I'm cured. I'm not going to be cured of any. I am me. I am just going to a psychiatrist so that I can feel better about certain issues in my life. That's all.
Hey guys, this is a special edition of QF, a podcast about Howard Stern. I'm your host Jim Fix, aka Fillmore, and with me once again is Cary, back from his mothballed hiatus. How you doing?
Yeah, fresh out of the box of mothballs. I'm doing fine. It's good to be back.
Yeah, we're doing a special episode on marbles, and right about now I'm going to throw an insert of a reading from C.A. Thompson, who did such a great job trying to break down predictions. I asked a lot of people from the QF group what she thought people were making at different times. And at one point, she explains how she feels like, for example, from when Casey got hired, he was making between 50 and 75, which you would think is a good guess. You think a producer, because he was not hired as an intern. He was hired straight off the bat as an associate producer for one of the biggest radio shows in New York City. With apologies to C.A. Thompson, when we started the recording, I had thought we were recording and didn't press record, and then I had read out her wonderful write-up. What happened was, back in January, I had the idea to do this show that originally I was not going to do, this particular theme about marbles, because I didn't want it to be purely speculative, but then I realized we do have documents that illustrate exactly how much Howard and the staff are getting paid, and then Also, we have audio from the show itself and from other shows that I've collected over the years that give you an idea of exactly how little or how much they're getting paid. And there've always been hints, and one of the best places was the wrap-up show. But either way, I asked a bunch of QFers, all on our Facebook site, privately, to just give me an idea of what they thought people were making. And hers was probably the best, and because she put the most work into it. And so, I mean, this is a smart gal. The subject of salaries at Stern is an interesting one. Over the years, we have heard bits and pieces of contract negotiations and fights over who should be making what. One thing that has always been clear to me is that Howard undervalues the work of his staff. By staff, I mean everyone except for Robin and Fred, and seems to keep many of them underpaid with the understanding that he will need them to do side jobs, which he can then mock them for on air. Howard operates with the same uncaring maliciousness as a restaurant owner who doesn't pay his staff an hourly wage and thinks he is doing them a favor by telling them they can keep their tips. I'm sure that I am way off, but here are my yearly wage guesses set in a couple year spans. So her first guess is from 1995 to 2000-ish. She has Robin at $250K, Fred at $200, Jackie at $200, Gary at $100, Ralph at between $50 and $75. And she continues, I think that before Private Parts, Gary was making in the $55,000 to $75,000 range, and that he was able to push for a wage that better reflected what he was actually doing for the show at that time. Robin has always made more than any of the other staff members, which is so absurd as she literally does nothing but cackle and be a yes woman for Howard. All of her news stories are cut and pasted by other people. She does not stay for meetings and has never participated in the creative side of things. She's being paid a quote-unquote token fee. I agree with a lot of that, and the reason why I'm not going to expound too much on this is because I want to get the reading out, and then Cary and I are going to address some of the numbers when we record. 2000-ish to Sirius. Robin, $350K. Fred, $250K. Jackie, $250K. Last salary before the contract blow up. Gary, $200K. Scott, $150K. Jason, $150K. John Hine, $150K. Ralph, $75 to $100K. KC, $50K to $75. JD, $50. Richard and Sal, $55 each. The salary I guessed for Jason is the one I think he stepped into once it became apparent that he was actually capable of running the office as good as, if not better than Gary. Jason and Will must have started around 50,000-ish as they had to squat together in a flat to survive. Both Jason and Will seem to have leapt from that into more comfortable lives fairly quickly. Casey was used and abused by Howard. He should have been paid more than what he was, but Howard knew he would continue to pull good radio from watching him struggle and spiral. I think that John Hine was offered a decent contract starting at around $150,000, and that included bringing the quote Jump the Shark brand with him, and Howard fluffing him for other things that John wanted to pursue, books, TV shows, etc. I can't see John accepting anything under $150,000, especially without a few tempting treats being included, given that he made a decent payday off of Jump the Shark. John bringing JTS to the show was an explicit move on Howard's part to hip the show a bit, to demonstrate that he knows what the kids are into. Basically, he jumped the shark with Jump the Shark. I agree with that, especially the John Hine stuff, because he is a Buckwald client that I know of, that I'm pretty sure. And also he became friends with Gary, and I'm sure that didn't hurt to him getting the job to begin with. Now, it's Sirius, not including some guesses about signing bonuses, which is amazing because Cary and I both discussed the signing bonuses, which we have no way of knowing what they are at that time. Sirius, Robin, 1.5 to 2 million. Fred, 1 to 1.5 million. Gary, 750,000. John Hine, 250. Ronnie, 200. Scott, 200. Jason, 200. JD, 150. Richard and Sal, 100 each. Ralph, 100 to 150,000. I think that Scott's salary remained fairly frozen over the last 10 years of him being there. His union would have required him there to be some increase, but Howard would not have moved far beyond that. Given the rumors floating around the last few weeks, I would not be surprised if Jason's salary is closer to Gary's, especially given the rumor that he is now Gary in rank. Ralph's wage reflects his silence and not work that he actually does. Zero doubt that he is paid handsomely to swallow and not tell. So, thank you so much, C.A. Thompson. We love you. Another person who did really well for us and put a lot of work into it was Deborah Marshall, who will soon be a contributor on QF, and she's another smart cookie. And she's got some amazing sort of, how can I say, parallel connections to the Stern Show in different weird ways. And I'm sure she'll be more than happy to talk about that when she gets her mic all set up, and then we start talking with her on a regular basis. At any rate, I asked her to do the same kind of homework, and this is what she talked about. I am sure Bowie makes high six figures, Fred 7 figures, and Robin 7. That house of hers in Staten Island was sold years ago. Since then, she bought a place in West Orange, New Jersey called Llewellyn Park, the site of Edison's laboratory. And the new place it's called 17 Linwood Way. That's the address in West Orange, New Jersey. Was still way too much for a single person, but whatever. Deborah says she still owns a place on the Jersey Shore, which is 6 Long Beach Boulevard. It's kind of narrow, and it has a dock. That's where she'll keep her boat if she still goes on it. To sum up, she owned a fabulous apartment in New York City for years and sold it to live on Staten Island with Tony, a.k.a. Mr. X. She bought a place on Staten Island and the Jersey Shore, sold the beach house to upgrade to the one I just sent to you, owned another New York City apartment. I'm not sure if she sold that, but she did buy the house in West Orange. I have a friend who did the cable TV installation there. I think Gary's been making 6 figures forever. He bought $1 million plus home in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is the most exclusive enclave in the state. Fred owns an apartment in New York City and a house in the Hamptons. I think that Robin, Fred, and Gary are well off, with Robin having the most money, followed by Fred. Remember, their salaries and worth to the show were solidified in the early 90s, and they stuck with him through all the others who have come and gone. Now, yes, he is a cheap fuck, but I think he realized his success was the result of their input. Mocking Gary mercilessly, Robin serving as his audience and giving him license to be his racist self, and Fred for knowing when to keep his mouth shut and doing all the behind-the-scenes work. Fred dates back to 1979 with him. Keep in mind, Robin dumped that house in Staten Island about 12 years ago. Fred's wife is a successful NYC realtor where commissions top 6 figures alone. Now, Deborah, when you say realtor, I'm not sure you're not just talking about her flipping houses to make money. And I do have a couple friends that have been doing that regularly, but at some point they're going to be stuck with a house they can't flip, and then you're really kind of stuck. You're not making that income, especially when there's a market shortage, when there's a market burst. There's a bubble that's no longer there anymore, and all of a sudden that your plan to flip is gone up in smoke, and you may be stuck with a bit of a lemon in terms of houses. So I think when you say realtor, I would definitely love to talk to you a bit more about that, because as far as I know, she's just a mom, basically, a failed actress, a show fucking sycophant that married a useless alien. Now, I say useless, I'm being a little hard on Fred. He did have a purpose at one point, but now he's just, obviously he's not doing anything. He's the hardest one to figure out money-wise for me, says Deborah, but owning an apartment in New York City and a house in the Hamptons plus assorted motorcycles leads me to think that despite him wearing white t-shirts and jeans every day, he's doing very well. Remember that the accidental viewing of the paycheck, this is the Artie Gary thing, was 15 years ago. So any salary you think about has to be in that context. Howard had been making $1 million since at least 1995, and as Cary and I will tell you, it's a lot more than that. None of the staff are in their 20s working at a startup. Jackie's final offering from Tom in 2001 was either 2000. She's incorrect, but that's okay. She's close. Was either $600K or $800K, and that's 20 years ago. When people talk about Wiggy, how he feels responsible for the staff and their livelihoods, he is 66. They're in their 40s at this point. Plus, he is full of it anyway, and he didn't care about letting the entire news team go or Howard TV. He made sure that Robin was financially satisfied, but only because he needed her. Maybe Fred on a peripheral level, but as long as it furthered his career. Robin had tons of money in the early 90s and just got wealthier. And what would you have thought, Cary, that he was making at the time?
I mean, we're still talking, there's no place with a higher cost of living than New York City.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing close is San Francisco. And, I lived there in the late 90s as an attorney and almost starved to death. So I mean, literally. And, 50 to 75 around that time, I guess, as cheap as Wiggy is, I don't think it's that far off the mark, but it's not much. And
No.
yeah, and you would think that he would only be able to supplement or make anything, any way to live off of and to support his drug habit by doing outside projects.
Well, in case of his addictions, I think it was booze, not drugs for KC. But you're right, and he also had a bad gambling addiction.
Right.
But he was desperate. I mean, the legendary stories on the show of him having to fucking write bad checks to his landlord, having to repossess his car, like he stole his car back from the lot after it had been impounded or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Right. Well, I was going to say this, the lawyer in me is coming out, all allegedly with regard to the drinking, the alcohol, drug, and or gambling addiction stories, allegedly.
But according to the Reddit mole, it was absolutely true. He was drinking like so much vodka daily, and it was affecting him at work, and he started cutting himself. It was really a horrible scene near the end.
Yeah, and then I think someone caught up with him later, like in California, and it still didn't seem like he was doing all that great. But no. I mean, I hope he is. I mean, I always liked Casey. I thought he was pretty funny on the show.
Me too.
Yeah. I hope he's doing better. But the point is, even if it was 75,000 in New York City in the mid to late 90s. That's still not that much. And then you add on those vices, that's nothing.
That's zero. That's right. And then they brought up like how he could supplement his income and talking about the years when they would be hosting a car wash or doing whatever. And it's like, there's no comparison, guys. You guys are an established multi-million billing show and making all kinds of money. But this is what he said to our buddy Jay Santiago on his Turnbuckle Tabloid show. So here's a shameless plug.
Casey was booked. He needed money at the time because apparently he wasn't making enough. Which, can you just say quickly, if it's not embarrassing, what was the most that you made on that show?
Okay, so what I made from Infinity Broadcasting wasn't a lot. I mean, they hired me at $23,000.
Wow, really?
But with with benefits, and all that, but 2% every year of that is 2% of nothing. So what I had to do is, and that's what all the other guys had to do too, was every weekend you go out and you have to hustle. So for 2 years straight, I would go out 2 years straight. I'd either do stand up or an appearance every weekend, and then I hooked up a couple endorsement deals with Twin Lab and Metrex. So towards the end, I was doing okay.
So. You basically he's saying 23,000 a year, 23,000. Like,
yeah, I mean, base salary, but that's funny that he brought up the Metarex or whatever that stuff was. But yeah, I do remember that he was doing that weightlifting stuff, supplements and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So I wonder how lucrative that was.
Well, yeah, I mean, so like what people. Again, we're going to go through. I have everything bookmarked. I have a bunch of like abstracts that not abstracts, but screen caps that I'm going to play for people. I got lots of clips, and the Jackie stuff is the most kind of damning. Although Stuttering John has made some points, and we'll go through all of them as well. But what are your thoughts on the salaries over the years? The two that we're really not sure of course, is Wiggy's, aside from the first Sirius contract and before, and then also Robin's salary. Those are the two most nebulous ones.
Right, and like you said, the lawsuit over the fake bonuses that Wiggy was going after the merger, mm-hmm. Those were that was the window that Wiggy just hated that was there that we could look through was because lawsuits are public record. So
that's right.
We were able to get a glimpse, and like I said, he hated that. But that's the best, that we and the most recent, quite honestly,
mm-hmm.
that we can go off of as far as Robin goes outside of little things that she said in her book, none of which was that recent. Like you said, the stuff in her book only related to when she left Washington, or when I should say Howard left her in Washington. And I think we still really don't know how much Howard promised her. I mean, I guess we assume that it's more than what she got or what she was offered in Washington. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's nebulous, but I would think that, I guess in the mid 90s, I would say if KC were making roughly 75,000, she had to have been making close to, I'd say 350 to $500,000.
Well, the problem here, and I've talked to Deborah Marshall about this, she has a shitload of very high, expensive, like high-priced real estate, and she has for years. Now, the question that doesn't presuppose, we can't presuppose that she's making the money to cover all those houses, but she might be making enough to constantly be paying off mortgages and then just living high off the hog, because we know from her own book and her own admission, she was a spendthrift. She just couldn't manage money for shit. At around the time of the K-Rock move from WNBC, and they all got shit canned. This is according to the Colford book. It explains that the Robin Quivers incorporated as ROQ Inc., Robin Ophelia Quivers, and was being represented by Buchwald, which was right then after Howard got represented by Buchwald. She signed for $100,000 that first year and $150,000 the next, and that's about on par as what she was being offered in Washington with Goff when Howard left. He was going to offer her about $90,000 a year for 5 years. And she didn't sign it because she had a tickle in her throat for 5 weeks and the offer was off the table. But so if she went from 86, 100,000 to 87, 150,000, do the math, by the end of the 90s, she was probably making closer to $1 million for sure. At that rate of increase, anyway, if that's the case. Fred Norris, it says, who had lingered with Al Rosenberg at the afternoon slot at WNBC, followed Howard to K-Rock for $85,000 in the first year and $105,000 for the second. So not as big an increase, but fairly substantial.
Right. And I think, you're right about the properties that all of them were able to afford. I mean, I think, I've seen pictures of Fred's property. We know Robin had a couple of pretty expensive places. So did Artie,
Yes.
But, we know Artie famously, I think he took a bath on his house in, where was it, Hoboken on the water?
Yes, Tom's River, I think, or that might have been Robin's place. But either way, yeah, it was. He ended up selling it for a loss.
Right, and then Robin did too here just recently, right? Her primary, or her big house, which
yes,
yeah, I don't get. I mean, I've never understood that, especially someone like her who isn't in a relationship, doesn't have any children.
That's right.
Yet she has this big house, but it gets back more to, like you said, how much was she making to be able to afford these properties and seemingly not have any problems obtaining them. I mean, she obviously ran into problems holding on to them long term, but but she must have had they're just not going to give you that type of property if you don't have the income to back it up.
Well, not only that, but her Staten Island estate, she used to live in Todd Hill, which is the same place Big Paul Castellano lived when he was living at what they called the White House. It was detailed. Anyway, she got the house for something like $2.5 million and had to unload it for $1.1 million. So she lost $1.5 million on fucking real estate. I mean, God only knows what more she lost from it, because who knows? So that was one place. And then in 2012, she sold another. I'm not sure if I don't think that was the one that she sold, because there were a couple of sales. I think she only has one place now, if I'm correct.
Right. And it makes you wonder why. I mean, why sell? I mean, you don't buy property to sell it at a loss, but. But she obviously was compelled to sell it, and I think you and I talked about it off air or when we were emailing each other that, it was probably health related, when she got sick.
Yes, it was probably most likely health related and also cash flow related, especially if in that second contract, which we know that Wiggy was making, $100 million. And we'll talk a little bit about the first series contract for sure. The second contract, he definitely was taking less money because as of 2011, sometime in the summer or fall of 2011, he goes to 3 days a week. And that somewhere he's definitely making less than 100 million, so maybe 90 or 80, and needs AGT to offset it by getting 15 million there. So to me, it sounds like and I know Wig, there's no way if he's taking a fucking pay cut, the rest of the staff isn't as well.
Oh yeah, they're all tightening up their belts.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's right. So, and the same Colford page, the page of the book, there's a 156 if you're reading along, folks. They hired Jackie in 1986 for about $35,000 a year and $78,000 in 1987. Apparently, this is what they were. He was clearly paid way less than Robin and Fred. It says as the years passed, Jackie would gripe to station management about his compensation, pointing out that he had become an indispensable member of the Stern Gang and deserved more. And then in the same page, it says here, by Howard's own estimate, he used 95% of Jackie's material. Listeners often could hear Howard crumpling one of Jackie's pages and tossing it away. So Jackie clearly was worth more than Robin, but was getting paid way less.
Right. And he's absolutely right. I mean, we can all tell he's no longer there. He hasn't been for years. And heck, you could even tell during the Artie era, it was easier to mask because Artie was there telling his stories and he could just kind of go off with his wit or whatever. And it masked a lot of it. But since Jackie hasn't been there, since Artie hasn't been there, there is no wit. There is no off the cuff, comedic bits. They're just not there. I mean, unless you want to count some of the crap that Benji sends, but we all know when it's Benji. It's yeah. There's a complete drop off, and Jackie's 100% right. I mean, he was and is indispensable to that type of show, and for the life of me, I don't understand all the hate, and I don't understand, and it's probably tied into marbles. I don't understand why Wiggy wouldn't see that and wouldn't try to make amends with Jackie and get him back.
Well, there's a couple clips we're going to play where that's concerned, and this is all from '95. So I'll see if I can get this right.
By the way, I'm the first one to stick up for anybody on the show who wants more money because I believe that we should all get as much as we can, but. I just don't want to get. I don't think there should be a salary cap, but I'm all for. And I back Jackie up to a point, but I can't get caught up in it.
It's not your job to go and negotiate for him, which you do every year.
And I don't think there's any pleasing Jackie. So.
And he never appreciates it.
Right. So I don't want to be around it. So I'm just saying, give it your best shot and then get out.
So at that time in 1995, none of us know, well, most of us, I'm pretty sure most of us didn't know until a certain point that Jackie was negotiated by nobody. He was negotiating himself, and that Fred and Robin were stuck with Buchwald and having to get whatever Howard threw at them. Now, as an attorney, have you ever come across this kind of thing where, or even in legal text where individual players maybe have the same agent, but their salary wouldn't be dictated by the whims of the biggest client.
Well, right. I mean, the problem, it's really for an attorney, it's an ethical issue, because let's say that Buchwald was an attorney.
Right.
I don't think ethically he could have done what he did with any of them. You're supposed to take on clients and look out for their individual best interests. And obviously, if you're looking out for the biggest client and then all the rest of them are kind of subsidiary, that's not, what kind of service are you giving the subsidiary clients? I mean, it's a clear ethical ethical issue for an attorney. So maybe that's why Buchwald isn't one. you know, and it's funny because I remember taking a class in sports law back when I was in law school, and they talked about this tension with between being an agent and being an attorney, and it's kind of analogous to this situation because we're talking about agents just in the entertainment field versus the sports field, but it's the same. You know, are you an attorney first, or are you an agent, or are they separate and you're an attorney one day and an agent the next? I mean, me personally, I'm always an attorney first, no matter what. So if I were in this position with Buchwald, I wouldn't have represented anybody but Howard, in that realm. Like I may have had other clients in radio in different places or things like that. But in that Stern universe, me personally, ethically, I would have only been comfortable representing one person. You mean in the Stern compound, for example? Correct. Yeah, like in his universe, like because the problem is if you have clients with different, where their interests start to diverge, and and that's what happened with, even though Buchwald never represented Jackie, but let's say that he did, it would have been a huge issue. Well, yes, and it ended up becoming more of an issue than anybody realized. And had they known this, they certainly would have had more venom towards Wiggy than they did, and a lot earlier than they did, because, and we'll detail it through screen caps and audio, guys. So I'm gonna play another bit of Jackie from the same negotiation, because it's one of the first negotiations. Then Derek and I are gonna. Sorry, Derek. Cary and I are going to read. Daryl. Yeah. Cary and I are going to take turns reading from the some of the abstracts.
Jackie burns bridges before he's crossed them.
Yeah, I have everyone in management coming to me and going, "How do you work with him?" I go, "What do you mean?" They go, "Not that, we understand a negotiation, but he's repulsive." And I go, "Really?" I go, "I don't see that. I mean, he's an okay guy." They go, No, he's just repulsive."
I wonder what he says in these meetings.
I don't know. But they get completely fed up, and they go, "Look, that's all we're paying," and then I got to step in.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired of it.
Do you believe that? Do you see the crazy eyes on the video? You see him shifting. You see him moving. That's why I left the video up and not the audio. You know that this is some bullshit conversation that he's having with himself. Oh, exactly. I mean, it's, it's a precursor of what he's going to do when he gets to Sirius. I mean, I guess he could ostensibly kind of hide behind, the station itself or the production company back in these days. But, once he gets to Sirius, we all know, or we know now, post lawsuit, that that chunk of money went to Howard's production company. So he knows exactly how much everyone makes. But in these days, back in the K-Rock era, he could hide behind all of this stuff. But I guarantee you, he knew through Buchwald exactly what was going on with the negotiations with Jackie and everyone else. Oh, fuck yes. And at one point, I have a clip, I think I've got it, and we'll play it. At one point, Bowie explains that he knows what Stuttering John makes. And they're saying, well, why does he know? He's the producer. Gary should not know what anybody else makes. That's not his business. Yet he was made to know it. It was always Howard and Buchwald. And John, Stuttering John, whatever you think of him now, he is a bit of a wet brain, mushmouth asshole, lush. But doesn't mean he was lying about how he was treated by Buchwald. And same with Jackie. And we've got some stuff that we're going to read about that. But let's continue with Jackie a little bit more.
But I don't want to sit there. I don't care really about the money, Howard.
How does it work? Because he goes into negotiation. You don't have anything to do with it.
No, I don't even know he's in negotiation. I don't find out.
Do you get a call, or does he call you, or does somebody else call you?
It depends on the year. I mean, some years Tom has called me first, or Jackie calls me first. Either one.
So why don't we just do the whole thing on the air?
And what does Jackie say when he calls?
Well, I didn't want to make this call. The last thing you need to be bothered.
Of course, we need a bong hit sound effect. So I'm going to go into the Fun with Negotiations abstract that I sent you the Jackie PDFs, right?
Yes, those were very illuminating.
Oh, big time. So let's see if I can find the exact one. Okay. Now, okay. So he said, here's the explanation. He said, once we were on syndicated, once they negotiated with Infinity for the rights to broadcast in LA, they were on both coasts. And it was just a matter of time before they started picking up more markets. And he said, I remember after we got syndicated to our first 2 affiliates in 1986, a healthy amount of pleading got me kicked up to $1,125 a week from $1,000. That's when I had gotten my first taste of negotiating with Tom Giussano in the station. And then the times when after a very healthy amount of negotiation, we couldn't come to agreement on a contract, I'd stay home because that was the only card I had to play. And you'll read this in a few places to make it absolutely clear. I never, ever simply failed to show up for work one morning. Tom Giussano always knew exactly where we stood and what was going to go down and always shared it with Howard. But come Monday morning and I wasn't in my seat, feigning not being aware of the situation, Howard would say, "Where's Jackie? He's not showing up today?" It was 100% theater every time. It got to the point that when it happened, Robin would say, "He's standing you up again?" So... And you heard it. I saw you laugh when he said I don't know that the negotiations are going on.
Right. I don't even know when they're happening. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so, and we're going to go a little bit into this as well, guys, because there's another bit of the abstract that talks about, this is something that from a chapter Jackie didn't include in his book, but he sent it to me. However, I feel comfortable reading about it to you guys because he's already said this in other interviews. So it's already out there and I'm not really betraying anything. He was explained to, by going to affiliates from town to town. He would, when he was doing comedy tours, he would meet with station managers from different places that he was going to promote. And they explained to him that basically it says, the one guy explained to him that the rock bottom price that syndicators had to pay for 1 year was minimum $250,000 a market. So they said they wouldn't even talk to a station that wasn't prepared to pay that. So on top of that, there were satellite feed costs, performance bonuses, and other additional feeds, and we'll read about that. But so they needed to get $250,000. He goes, my salary for 1994 and 95 was $300,000 a year. That's Jackie. And when it was contract talk, he's going up to Tom, and Tom said, I can only give you $337,000 with a 7.5 raise the next year. And he wasn't happy. He wanted $100,000. The way Jackie figured it, he wanted 1/25th, if you're figuring he's the 25th of the show. And that worked out to 10 new markets, $100,000, 1/25th.
And that's what, I was curious about after reading this, and then after reading those excerpts from the Colford book about, those chapters where he talked about how Howard was adding different markets along the way.
Yes, sure.
And I was curious about that compensation. Like, for instance, the station manager that told Jackie, oh, yeah, look, we have to pay this $250,000 fee, bottom line. Like, who does the $250,000 go to? Does it go to Howard's production company? Does it go to, I guess this was back in the Infinity days, or the K-Rock days. So I guess it would go to Infinity. And then what? Howard negotiates some type of percentage out of that?
So Jackie explained it to me that it was split between Infinity. So Karmazin, obviously, like Infinity Broadcasting, half, maybe about half, I'm assuming. And then Howard and Buchwald's get this 15% no matter what. And then Howard would get that. So it really was, so if it was 250, you got to say, okay, 125 to Infinity and, 110 or whatever going, or 107 to Howard, every new market. But then not every market was 250. Some of them were 4, 5, 6, 7, up to $1 million, depending on the size of the market.
Right. Okay.
And then you read the stuff about he got bonuses for, literally he could get 10,000 for a tenth of a point, ratings point, if he increased, if he got more ratings during every quarter or whatever. So he was totally getting money working it from everywhere. 5% of the ad revenue. He got point bonus stock options. He got everything. So the amount of money Wiggy was making, he was never not comfortable.
Well, right. And then it's funny, you know, like when he's expanding his presence, when he's adding these other markets, he's getting, you know, a percentage. He's making money each step of the way. Yet none of the others that, again, especially the ones that Buchwald represents, they're not getting increased cuts on any of this stuff.
No, and that was Jackie's argument. He said, because when we have to do the negotiations, this is what he explained. Tom wasn't willing to give him his increase. He said, "You'll have to talk to Howard." I went to Howard, and he told me I had to call Don. I called Don's office, and they told me I had to talk to Mel. Mel told me I had to work it out with Tom and Howard, who, of course, referred me back to Don. So he had the meeting with Mel, and Mel said, "I'm not going to." The bid over 5 years was going to be like just over $2 million, and he goes, "That's a very generous offer, but I want $400,000 next year, and I'm firm on that figure." So then he talks to Wiggy, and he in his joke he writes it's a horrible joke. It's an old Jewish joke. He says, "A little Jewish girl runs up to her father and says, 'Daddy, Daddy, I need $50. He says, $40. What do you need $30 for?'" So anyway,
that's terrible.
It is terrible. So he says, after a few minutes of farting around on the phone with Howard, which Howard said, "I need you, man." I said, "I'm sorry, I did my best. Tom and Mel won't budge, and we're really far apart." Howard said, "I gotta have you. I'll pay the difference. What is it?" I said, $62,500. He said, "Okay, come in. I'll give you the $50,000. I said, $62,500. He said, okay, I'll give you $60,000. I said, half smiling and half kidding at this point, because I knew we were both relieved and thrilled this had been fixed and the show was going to be whole again. $62,500. He said, "Okay, $62,500. Fuck you. I'll see you tomorrow."
and you know what always gets me is, who do you think convinced Howard that he didn't need Jackie? Like, who in that universe, or was it just Wiggy's own ego getting out of control, where he just innately believed that he was this comedic genius and he didn't need Jackie?
I think there was a couple things at play. I think that losing the marbles in the divorce changed his opinion on like marbles in general, and that he just had to hoard more than ever. And if Jackie was going to be responsible for taking them out of his pocket that time, it was the worst timing. It was just bad timing. I think also they were losing markets closer to the divorce time because of the Selena controversy. And even though, who was the guy had to Me Too'd not too long ago, the guy that sued him when he left for left for Sirius. Oh, what was his name? Les Moonves.
Oh yeah, sure, Les.
To offset the lost markets, he got Howard like 9 new markets. Like, he literally created those 9 new markets. Do the math, guys. Another 250 by then. It would have been more like $500,000 to $1 million each market, and in his pocket, just to offset it. Like, that's the kind of power Les had at the time. But he was losing markets, and it was clear the way, if you listen to the archives, they were not doing as well as they had in their heyday. Like, there was definitely a downslide in the ratings, or other shows like O&A were eating into their ratings. So they might have been not getting bonuses like they were. And they talked about how we're not getting any raises. And Jackie insisted on getting raises, thinking the show was maybe bigger than it was. And other than that, I can't imagine, because he explained he was making $579,000 that last year.
Right. But remember too, right around this same time, and I think Colford talked about it, Wiggy was also getting that E money as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's when, that's going way back. That's when I really started religiously getting into Stern. It was through the E show, and then finding him on local radio, because it was on a station here in Phoenix that I didn't listen to. It was like a hard rock station, and I really wasn't a hard rock guy. And and I really didn't know anything about Stern until the E! Show.
Right. Well, you're looking at the again, Colford is the Bible, unfortunately. Like we only have it. I say unfortunately because it's dated. It's a certain point. It just doesn't become as relevant. But on this particular page, in the postscript of the paperback, it says Stern was expected to earn about $12.5 million in 1995.
In 95, yeah. Adjust that for today? I mean, God, what would that be? Like 40 million?
I suppose it says here. Okay, his radio work about 8 million, affiliate, syndication, whatever. Okay, no, sorry, that includes that. I believe 1.5 million a year for each radio broadcast videotaped. So the E! Show. A new contract to write a second book for Miss America, I believe. That was an advance of 3 million. So you do the math. And he made shitloads. He must have made 3.5 million on private parts, and I'm sure he made an equal amount in the sales of Miss America. So he was fucking rolling in it.
Oh yeah, and one of the things from the excerpts from the Colford book. Oh my gosh, remember how he used to say? I forget what that Yiddish word is for trinkets, or what is it? What is it?
Oh, tchotchkes.
Right. And he would say, "Oh, I would never pawn that kind of stuff off on my audience."
Right.
Yet he made a ton of money on those videotapes. That,
of course.
I'm sure we're going to lose like half of our audience because they won't understand what videotapes are.
Exactly.
But I remember those. He was hawking those, and I think they were selling them for like $24.95 back in the. I think Colford was talking about that had to be in the late '80s. So
okay, well, I've got it right here.
Yeah,
the negligee and underpants party. Which is as bad as it sounds, guys. It says pay they did. An estimated 60,000 homes in the New York area each paid $19.95 to receive the special. Participating cable systems pocketed half of the 1.2 million gross, while Showcase and Howard would split the remaining half. So it says on top of Howard's estimated $300,000 payday, far richer than any one-night stand on Fox, he retained the videocassette rights and hawked copies at $24.95.
$24.95. That's right. Yeah. So not only did he make the money on the pay-per-views, which were, God, remember everybody had pay-per-views back then.
Oh fuck yeah.
Yeah, like New Kids on the Block and people like that had pay-per-views, and then that how savvy was that? He kept the rights and then was hawking those stupid tapes for. And then think about that, $24.95 back in the late '80s. That was pretty pricey.
Oh, shitloads of money. And if he's getting, that's all gravy at that point. The pay-per-view, once the company has put up the money, I'm sure they only get a modicum of like a certain amount of money for each video cassette, because at that point you're just paying for manufacturing, printing, shipping, whatever. And how much is that really back then?
Exactly.
So either way, I have a bunch of things we're going to go through. I want to try to get as many clips as I can in, guys. So let's see if I got this right. Jackie, part 3, we played that. Let's try part 4.
They look at me like when I first came. They look at me like when I first came here. And they won't give me more. And even though I'm not heard on the air that much, I make an important contribution. And Fred, I'm not trying to compare myself to Fred. Hey, I don't care what Fred gets or Robin gets. It's what I want. And I don't even care about the money, because you know me.
Okay, so of course, Wiggy, if they feel you can just understand why Jackie is so fucking livid at this point, because his negotiations are being mocked of and made fodder on the show. But Robin and Fred joining in on, like, at the if they're really with Jackie, if they really like him, they just don't mock him. They don't help the mockery. They don't pile on. But they're all in it against him, because how dare he ask for more, and we don't have the balls to do it.
Well, and then, for Wiggy to say what he said about, oh, no one, even though no one hears him or whatever. Now, I can't believe I'm doing the fake Jackie voice that Howard was doing. That's annoying as hell. But anyway, for for them to pile on after that, because they, of all people, know how important Jackie is to the show. They're the ones that are watching the notes being passed. I mean, they know it. They know how important he is. And for them to pile on, like you said, that's just got to irk the hell out of Jackie.
So the New Year's Rotten Eve, yet another pay-per-view that Howard made a shitload on, 1994. He basically, they were in the process of trying to figure this out. And then apparently Don asked Jackie to go traveling to certain markets looking for beauty show contestants, like women, because it would have disgusted Wig to go do this, of course. And he says, I don't remember the details. I just know Don wanted me to head up these talent search shows in a bunch of markets for very little money. Of course, any weekend I'd be traveling to, say, Chicago to host one of these shows would eliminate me working that weekend for big pay or having a few well-needed days off. As gently as I could relay it, I explained to Don that it wouldn't be beneficial to me. Needless to say, he wasn't especially thrilled at me not jumping on the opportunity. However, after however long, Buchwald said, let me call Howard and see what he thinks. He made it seem like he was dialing, then put Howard on speakerphone, and the way Howard joined the conversation made it immediately apparent he had been listening to the entire meeting, that we'd been on speakerphone the entire time. And this is I'm going to bring up the Stuttering John clip. Let me see if I got this right. Buchwald control. Okay. So Buchwald wanted to put together a t-shirt deal for Stuttering John, because at one point, and this is where John's book sucks, he says, Buchwald represented me, but then suddenly he doesn't explain how the split happened. So he was going to do a t-shirt deal for John, and he goes, why don't you get one for Robin or Howard? And Buchwald supposedly said, well, because they're too big for that. And Buchwald said, I worked weeks on this, he said to me in his office. Then he did what he usually did and turned to the phone behind him and said, I'm going to call Howard. I'm just representing you as a favor to him. I said, I'll do it, Don. Please don't call Howard. And he said, this is what Don did. He used my love of Howard and my fear of pissing him off against me.
Oh God! Well,
and imagine if he was an attorney. What kind of how quick would he lose his? How quick would he get dropped by the bar?
Oh, exactly. I was going to say that's like kind of a law school exam question on ethics right there. It's like, if you can't spot that issue, I mean, you probably don't belong in law school. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge example of like split, someone with competing interests and him taking one side over the other.
How could you justify treating one client way worse because just for placating Howard? Now, here's my question to you, especially in this context. Do you think this was Buchwald's idea to keep Howard in the know, or Howard is like, look, if you're going to be my agent, I want to know what everybody else is making, or I do know what everybody else is making, but I want you to tell me everything they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that comes out just in as part of Howard's love of marbles and just his personality and being a control freak and ADHD and OCD and everything else. He has to know this stuff. I mean, how many times during these interviews does he try to get, these celebrities to talk about how much they make, or, how much did your dead mom leave you, who was a celebrity, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think, and again, but that goes into like the ethics of being an agent. I mean,
yes,
you would think, you would hope that there would be some type of regulation, but there really isn't, as far as, like I said, without Buchwald being an attorney. I mean, if he were, if what Stuttering John said were true and he was able to prove that, I mean, you're right. Buchwald would lose his law license in a heartbeat, where he says, look, I'm only representing you as a favor to Howard. What kind of crap is that?
Right. And there's some great agent stories in terms of the Bernie Brillstein book. You're nobody in Hollywood unless someone wants you dead is a great book where he apparently he was doing negotiations for Ed O'Neill and married with children because he's saying he'll never fucking work again. Give him some fucking money. You know, he's screaming at the execs, and they said, Bernie, what does he want? What the fuck does he want? And apparently Bernie said something like, I don't know, Billy. He goes, I don't know, but I think I'll know it when I hear it. So anyway, at any rate, the Billy West saga is one we're going to go into more detail another time, but this is kind of a key component to the thinking of Howard and Buchwald, because Richie Wilson explained on the interview we did with him that Howard only wanted non-union workers. How Scott the engineer managed to stay union in that morass of fucking non-union workers is beyond me. But he wanted non-union because they wouldn't have any fucking rights. They wouldn't have anybody to back them up. So this is the explanation as given by Stuttering John, but then also by Billy in several interviews. Billy left at this time because E-Show was non-union and Billy was in 3 unions, after SAG and I think another one. His agent told him that he could get thrown out of the unions for working below the union rate, which is what the show was paying him. Go figure. Billy told me that Howard called him at home, and when Billy answered the phone, Howard said, hey, big shot. Then when Howard said he couldn't understand why Billy wouldn't do the show, Billy said that it went against his unions and that he could get thrown out. Then, believe it or not, Howard said something like, well, why don't you just do it until you get caught? And then it says after Billy left, Howard was talking to Robin in the studio off the air and in between commercial breaks saying something like, can you believe Billy left? What does he think he's going to do? Doesn't he realize that the only reason he gets voiceover work is because people hear him on this show?
Oh my God.
The guy he ended up fucking voicing Space Jam. So anyway, there's loads of clips, and we're going to get through some of them, guys. One of them is okay. First, before we get into those, I wanted to confirm, make it clear to people. I sent you the link to the Sirius contract, the redacted one that was in the Judge Kapnick lawsuit that Judge Kapnick tossed out against Sirius.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So when he got to Sirius, it was $100 million a year plus stock options.
Right.
Okay, and then, so was it a situation where Sirius paid Howard money, like a flat $100 million, which included production costs, and then Howard's production company paid the staff?
Yes, that was my understanding of it. So he knows or knew exactly how much money, who got what. I mean, it was essentially like Sirius gave him a pie, and then he cut it up to give to, his employees how he saw fit.
But he did it in a way that it's not coming through his production company. He's billing Sirius. He's giving the money back to Sirius to funnel into production costs for the staff.
See, I didn't read it that way. I was under the impression that it went to his production company, and then I thought his production company was the one that actually shelled out the paychecks. But I don't know, that kind of does that run counter to Artie's whole thing when he saw Bowie's paycheck? Or are they claiming that it had Sirius rather than 112 on it?
That's the thing. I don't recall that, and I was thinking about that entire episode because what bothered Artie is that Gary was making more than him.
Right.
Slightly more, and I don't blame him. And we know from years that like the years in the show, Artie, when he started, was making what he called a base salary. He said it was like a base. In 2005, when they were leaving, him and Gary both admitted that the station head, K-Rock, had approached them to replace Howard. Artie was going to get something like $5 million a year guaranteed for 4 years.
Right.
And Bowie was going to be part of the show. It was going to be like a sports or whatever, and they both turned it down stupidly. Artie could have taken 1 year. He could have taken the multi-year contract and done his job, and if he didn't get the ratings, they would have paid him $20 million for a year's work for not being able to get Howard's ratings.
I don't know, though. Can you imagine that show? That would have just been awful. Because the one thing, I mean, I love Artie, But
Yeah.
the one thing I hate about him, and it's one of the million things that I hate about Bowie, is that they're both New York homers when it comes to sports. Like they
totally.
don't. Yeah, I mean, and it got annoying on the show. But can you imagine if they had a sports show together? I mean, it would be all Yankees and Jets talk all the time.
And Mets.
Right, and the Mets. Yeah, that's like, yeah, where's a window I can jump out of?
Yeah, and Artie not even being a really Jersey son, he wouldn't talk with the Devils or the Nets or anything, So yeah, you're right. So at any rate, I'm not sure exactly because we don't know. Like we only know the employees that were under 112, like being Beth and Ralph and Tony and certain other people, but Robin's not under that. Like she has a production company, but I believe Howard would have put it in such a way that it's not coming from him, but it is. Like the money gets funneled through somewhere else so he can have plausible deniability.
Well, right, but then you could also, like you brought up a good point about like Robin and her having her own production company, or maybe these other folks, or maybe Robin in particular, set up, S corps for tax reasons where, the money was coming from either 112 or Sirius to her company, and then she was drawing a salary from her company. It could have been it's almost like a shell game.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to play this. When we interviewed Jackie, he said something pretty revelatory, and I know I've already referenced it, but this is in relation to his salary and Fred's salary when he left, and so this is 2000.
Yeah, but the same old thing. Fred wasn't a stand-up comic, and Robin wasn't this was a gig, and this was a cherry gig, and that's what made my life so tough, is because, as we were getting better, and he was making more and more money, and we're getting more and more popular. I'm like, hey, share the pie. And meanwhile, in 40 years, I would venture a guess that Fred has never said the words, "I want more." I don't think he would have ever said that to Buchwald or Howard, and he just would take. And, I found out when I left the show, I'm telling you, Fred worked from, an hour before the show started till an hour after the show ended, and he played the commercials and did the sound effects and wrote. I mean, he literally did 10 times, if 5 times as much work as me. I would walk in and sit down and take out my Sharpie. Howard would start talking. I'd start writing. Howard would say, "We'll see you tomorrow." I'd put down my Sharpie and leave. It was almost that cut and dried. And Fred worked so hard. I found out when I left, I was making almost 3 times as much as him, which is such a fucking, and I wasn't doing all that well, but it's such a crime.
So I wanted to put that in because during our interview, people commented on a lot of things, but they left that one alone, and that was staggering to me. That means, and then I asked him outright, I said, "Can you confirm what you said, that you were making 3 times more?" He said, "No, Fred was making $250,000 a year in 2000.
Wow. But then how was Fred able to afford that? Doesn't he live in Connecticut?
I believe he's got a house in the Hamptons.
But man, you can't afford that kind of property on $250,000 a year, and especially not in New York. And he's not making. I mean, King Norris isn't pulling in any money.
Their stadium gigs don't pay for the equity. Well, here's the thing. I believe that I'm sure they all got a bump at Sirius. And if Fred was making $250 in 2000, let's say he was making, let's say 400, anywhere from conservatively, I estimate he was making about 400,000 on K-Rock before they left, or maybe 350. And then when he got to Sirius, he probably got a bump to 500, 600, 700,000.
And I wonder, was there the equivalent of a signing bonus? I'm pretty sure Howard did, because remember Howard got stock options too.
Yes. Now that's not to say they all did. They did. They may have all got a bit of stock as well. Who knows?
Right.
I'm sure Howard wasn't going to share those. And performance bonuses didn't apply to them. So who knows? But either way, Artie was explaining when he got signed, he was a base salary, and I didn't know what that meant, except he said he got $35,000 a show for the Norm show, and if he did like say 10 episodes, he was looking at $350 a year. I believe that's probably what he was making initially to do the show. And then when he got to Sirius, eventually he got up to upwards of about $700,000. But here's some audio from Artie talking a little bit about it. Let's see.
Listen, I've said this before. If I couldn't make the money I make on the road, I might be bitching about money here. But you know what? The fact of the matter is, I choose to do the road a lot and take that schedule because honestly, out of respect for Howard, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy bitching about money.
And you and I both know he should have been bitching about money.
Right. Right. But you know, he liked being out on the road. It was fairly lucrative for him. And, you know, he knew where to score the H in all these out of town places. So he was good to go.
Sure. But at the same time, I mean, this is so there's a couple things that kind of go towards that. This is Vincent Pastore. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, all kidding aside, I mean, Artie could make fairly decent scratch on the road. Out of all of the people in the Stern universe, I would say he and Jackie would be the ones to make money outside of the show because they are both comics. They both have a talent outside of the show. I mean, Bowie doesn't have any talent for anything, you know, neither does Robin. So, or, you know, I mean, Fred, I guess he has talent in playing funny clips on a radio show, but that's limited, you know. But as far as like being able to, you know, like is someone's not going to go to a comedy club and watch Fred do sound effects, but people will go to a comedy club and pay money to listen to Artie and listen to Jackie to a certain extent. So the money for Artie back in the day must have been pretty good, and maybe he just considered the Stern Show gravy. It's kind of like how Wiggy wishes AGT was.
Well, yes, but like by the end, Artie was making upwards of 70, 80,000 a stand-up gig, 80,000 a single gig. Now that would have been great. That's a seventh of his salary near the end. Now, and the thing is, the argument was, well, if you paid him more, wouldn't he have just spent more, and would he have still gone on the road? Probably. That's the thing I believe, but. He would have had less stress to go on the road if he got paid that extra. So if he got $1.5 million a year, I'm sure he would have cut down on a couple gigs here and there. I'm sure he felt like, I got to go out. The money's just there and I'm not making it here. That's what's going on in his head.
Yeah. Yeah. And then maybe, you know, he's thinking too, you know, that he's less beholden to the show in a sense, you know, or he has more freedom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so there's a number of things we're going to go into here. First of all, this one is going on in 2007. There was a clip. 2004. This is a great clip about how Bowie explains, stupid Bowie explains his finances with relation to Stuttering John. So bear with me, guys. We're going to have to break this one up.
Is there Bowie math?
Great move, by the way. I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my whole life. I can't believe still how stupid I am. John and I are up at Syracuse. John and I are up at Syracuse. We're drinking. Okay?
Yeah.
And I don't know, John just... we start talking and we're drinking.
It's like Mary tricks you.
A bunch of people hanging around, but now everyone's out of the room. Just me and John. And I don't know, but it's 10 minutes later, he knows how much I make him.
Oh, my God.
What an idiot.
Yeah. So here we go.
Are you kidding?
From Ian. Actually, no, he doesn't know from
You tell him that.
Because John goes, because John told me what he made. But see, what John makes from here isn't really, not the same thing, because John's got a whole bunch of other.
So what happened when you found out what Gary made? I don't even know what Gary makes.
Honestly, can I tell you this? Our hotel rooms were adjacent to each other, but I forgot. So when I got into the room, I started screaming to Susanna. It was like, I can't believe how much he makes.
So you'll hear through the course of this, guys, that this is from 2004, January 22nd, 2004, if you're looking through the archives. And what Bowie reveals during this clip, which I'll play, is that up until a few years before, so let's say 2000, he was only making $10,000 more than Stuttering John. Stuttering John left the show in 2004 saying he made only $85,000 a year. So imagine how much Bowie was making.
Jeez.
The producer of this show, and Boy Gary, who was making $27,000 a year as Boy Gary, not Boy Gary, like as soon as his first job after he was Boy Gary.
Jesus Christ.
Like, I mean, that is what you want to call starving your fucking staff. So do we have to figure that Jason and Will, as like producers like KC, they were making similar money to him?
Yes, but again, it makes me wonder, like, Casey's another kind of example of he was popular. People would pay to see him if he went to, a nightclub or did something similar to the whole Ronnie's block party type thing, or
posing for a gay photograph.
right, yeah, opening up gay clubs around the country, or no, but doing the stuff with weightlifting supplements and things like that. But nobody's gonna pay, and so it makes me wonder how somebody like Jason can live. Jason and Will, how they can survive just on the Sirius salaries. I think it must be more. It's got to be, at least enough to eke out a living in New York City. I mean, it's got to be.
Well, they were younger then. They were younger then, so I imagine they were even living at home and doing this. Like they were actually, living with their folks, and then working on the show after being interns or what have you, or just callers, as the case may be with Will. But then you're right. Once they get to Sirius, maybe making a little more, let's say 50, 60, because the story I got was JD, for example, going from being an intern to just basically pulling clips, which is a nothing job, $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
And living in New York. $60,000?
Right.
No way.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and then he marries an influencer, and that's gotta increase his bottom line.
So let's play the rest of the clip.
I realized Cary was next door, and so there's like, shh.
You know what the funny thing was? Up until 3 years ago, John and I were probably like $10,000 apart. That used to make me nuts.
Yeah. Well, that's not right.
So I got a little raise here and there, and then
Cary,
John got a reduction.
Cary, by the way, I didn't bring it up. You did.
Yeah, because we're not going to talk about numbers. We just talked about. But this is what John does.
I can't believe you got him to admit that.
How did you do that?
Oh, it was great.
John, tell them what happened.
It was a moment of excellence.
And the other thing is, they're talking about like John would have made a little more. That was when he had an air shift. I remember he was fired from his air shift on the air. And John would be by lunch. He would pre-record his show, and then he'd be home before lunch listening to his show. I love that. Let's keep going.
Tell them what happened 10 seconds after I told you.
What?
I just was already yelling at myself.
Yeah.
I go, why did I just tell you that?
And I was yelling at myself too.
Well, why would you be mad that I make what I make and you make what you make? I mean, you leave every day at 11 to go to lunch.
Oh, it just was. You know what, Cary? I don't want to. Well, I was just amazed at how much it was. Like, I didn't think it was that much. In my head, when I figure out your salary in my head, it was always a lot lower.
Now I'm sure that's because he thought Gary was just a fucking useless, just as useless a tit as he was. But John was the face of the show at one point and was definitely more prominent. And would be doing the interviews and stuff like that. So I found that funny. Let's play a little more, and then we'll try to get to another clip.
So you could be off when you're telling us what everybody makes.
Yeah, and then I figured
it totally changed my.
DePace and I figured out exactly what John makes, and I asked him to his face, and John just got a funny smirk and no, that's not true. So now I know it's true. We figured out. What happened was we got like 10 people together. We did a job.
Yeah, I mean,
we got like 10 people together. So some people know one aspect of a salary. Some people know other aspects. I know another aspect. And we all put our heads together and figured out what he make. And he makes...
Well, that's the thing I'm a little angry about.
Probably even a little bit more than I make. Well, you're a little angry about that.
No, Howard, you know what I'm angry? No.
So, I mean, Wiggy loves this because they're all fighting, basically. And this is when the show is still great. And it is fascinating to hear about, but there's no reason in any normal work environment where you're discussing discussing each other's salaries.
Oh, yeah, I know. I know. Yeah. I've done that in my personal life before, talked too much about that, and it's never good.
No, it's not.
Never good.
Yeah.
I'm making that like
we guessed.
No, but doesn't Tom tell you how much all of us make?
No,
he does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tom tells you?
Yeah, and that's
I know
not
how much
right.
He didn't tell me.
I know what he would tell you if you wanted.
Right.
Katie and JD. And
Now, there's the office manager is telling the producer what other people make. There's got to be some kind of, and union-wise, that might be a big. If they were union, that would be one big fucking snafu, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes, of course it would. But no office manager is going to do that. And then I started laughing when Howard goes, "I don't even know." It's like, of course he knows.
You mean this? You mean this one?
I have no idea what you make.
really?
I have no idea.
I love that. And there's some clips actually. So there's a couple more clips I'm going to go into, guys. And this is about specifically about mostly the Sirius years, because in 2007 they had a discussion on the air about who can retire. Do you remember this one?
From a wealthy family.
Now, who has more money? Gary or Fred?
I would say Fred.
I would hope it's Fred.
I mean, I just know what I know what I made for a long period of time.
Right.
And again, but it's one of those weird things. I guess at what Fred made, and I would hope that Fred was doing a lot better.
Well, do you have what Howard just described? Fred said he didn't. Do you have that?
Do I have a
$1 million in the bank, $1 million cash, liquid to invest, and a house paid off?
Well, of course not. No.
Right.
Of course, King of All Blacks is on the air. Like, it's the perfect storm of like bottom feeders.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, who has the mowing faucets?
Yeah. Well, he goes basically Howard's definition of, you got $1 million in the bank and you've got $1 million, like your house is paid off and you have $1 million in, let's say, investments. Yeah. And like, you're not in Hawk. And so Boogie and Fred both said, no, we can't retire.
Right.
So let's see if I got this right. Fred claims in 2007 that he didn't have $1 million in the bank.
Live the rest of your life?
Sure you could.
So you don't think Fred has that?
I thought he did.
He's got to have that.
Oh, God.
Fred, come on, you have to have that.
Fred doesn't have a bank.
I do not.
Fred doesn't have a bank?
I have a bank, and they're always looking
Fred,
for
you don't have $1 million liquid and a house paid off.
No, I do not.
Get out
Wow.
of
Do
here.
you understand
Square business, hand on a
wait.
Bible, I do not.
But Fred, when you're
I want to have a telethon for Fred.
When you plan every year out.
So I don't know about you, but I believe Fred. I have no reason to doubt it.
I do too. And that's God, that's so shocking and sad, honestly.
Right, because for the years, and you read Reddit, Reddit's the worst place, but you go down that rabbit hole, all of a sudden you think of every fucking conspiracy comes to light. There were there were 6 Lee Harvey Oswalds, and there were anyway.
Right.
So a lot of people believe that Fred's making $5 million a year and Robin's making $10 million a year. Do you really think either of those two nudniks would have stayed that long if they were making $5 and $10 million a year each?
No. And they've all individually tried at certain points in their careers to get away from Wiggy.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought that was kind of interesting. And I think they both have just kind of given up. It's like, I don't know, like maybe like a battered spouse or something. And it's just like, I'm just gonna, wait this guy out or wait the person out and just go with the flow until the end, where a person's like kind of resign themselves to be in a bad relationship or something. I don't know. It's crazy, but I do think it's interesting that at different times they both. I mean, Robin with the Scuttled talk show that I know that you were saying that's like the holy grail. You wish you could get a copy of that.
Totally.
And then wasn't Fred trying to get with Lorne Michaels and be and trying to become a writer on SNL?
That's right. Do you see the yellow highlighted portion of the screen, the reading?
Yes.
Why don't you do that reading, and because you have such a lustrous voice.
All right. These kinds of beatings weren't only thrown my way. Fred told me that one of his songs on his album was a song about Howard. It was called "Don't Talk Down to Me." Gary once told me that at one point Fred was so fed up with Howard's abuse that he wanted to leave the show and audition for Saturday Night Live.
That would have been fun.
Yeah,
I do a great what do you call it? What is it? Was the Nazi? Was it Kurt Waldheim?
Kurt Waldheim, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what he's going to go in there and do characters. So let's see if I got this right. Bowie exposes his full, unfiltered, naked stupidity.
I got to say, I don't know why I'm so talked up about this. This is the first time in 25 years listening to you guys. I wanted to call in. Gary, I guess I'm amazed that you are not much richer than you are. I mean, everybody knows how much Howard makes, and I guess is radio that shitty a business that
it can be?
Kind of salary
it can be. So okay, when I started working with Howard, we were on in one market, okay? And as popular as he was, we were on in afternoons in one market. Then we went to K-Rock and we were on in mornings.
It can be when you work for a fucking pelican who holds on to every fucking marble.
Exactly.
We got a second market, the third market. But, I did not deal with Howard for money. I dealt with management for money. And they sort of gave you they sort of said flat out, well, this is what it is. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere. And I did. Listen, I had the opportunity. I could have said, I'm going to quit and call their bluff. But when you call somebody's bluff, you got to be willing to go through with it. Right. And I always said, I said this even when we left K-Rock, that not only with me, but there's a lot of people.
I'm going to hold on for a second. This is just a few seconds.
That company benefited from giving a low salary because of their love for the job.
They benefited from people's stupidity and their inability to get better paying jobs elsewhere. That's true. I mean, Robin couldn't leave. You're right. They had no outside gigs. So Gary was left swinging a sledgehammer onto monster truck rallies into a bumper and flying back like a spider monkey with a Louisville Slugger.
Yeah, I mean it's like they're trapped. I mean it happens to people all the time. Where they say they stay in a job, or I was making the analogy to relationships, but
sure.
But even more basic than that, like people's careers. I've seen people kind of age out or get to the point where they're stuck, like they can't say give up their, for instance, like practicing law, like if they're out on their own having with their own practice, but at some point they're like, what, I want to switch gears and maybe go work for the state or go work for the county. And they can't because they're too old. I mean, no one's going to, come right out and say, well, look, no, we're not going to hire you because you're too old, obviously. But that's what happens, and
right.
They've got no choice but to stay where they are and do what they do until the bitter end. And that's, to me, that's exactly what happened to Fred, Bowie, and Robin. I mean, they can't go anyplace else.
No, and certainly now, but I mean, even 20, 15 years ago, there was the same deal. Like, there's nowhere they were going to get the money they were getting. And not that they were worth what they got anyway, but Bowie was definitely underpaid in terms of the success of the show, just as Jackie was, just as Fred was.
Sure.
And wouldn't it have been, this is, I guess, another question to you on a not ethical level, but more like a business perspective. Does it make more sense to keep people hungry and starving and thinking, oh, you're like Machiavelli, I'm going to keep them loyal because they have nowhere else to go? Or does it make them more harder workers and better workers if they share in the success of the show by giving them a little extra every time there's a new market, by giving them a little extra of the ad money if they do this or that? Because like if they don't have to worry about where their next meal's coming from, they can put that effort into the show.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think it's definitely the latter and not the former. I know personally how I would feel if I were working for somebody who, like you said, you knew they were doing well, you knew that you were part of that success, and that the person you were working for recognized that and gave you and rewarded you accordingly. You're going to be even more, you're going to want to run through a wall for that person. That whole, Machiavelli thing, shoot, that to me, that makes you want to plot for that person's downfall.
That's exactly right. So this is a great clip of disgruntled Fred speaking up.
My question's about, you were talking about the wrap-up show before, and Fred said his wife couldn't possibly answer the question as to why he feels underappreciated by Howard. So I was wondering if Fred would be willing to answer that for all of us on the air.
That'll be for another show. I want to come back to the wrap-up show.
Okie dokie.
We'll have you back tomorrow, Fred.
That could be an hour.
Yeah, there's only 1 minute.
Charts and graphs.
We only have 1:55 left.
So that's funny. That's funny that they all knew. They all kind of knew. It wasn't like a surprise, right?
Yeah.
So this goes into as always, guys. The wrap up show is a wealth of information. Now, this is already talking about salaries and how he was shocked.
Right. So what about you? Are you worth $2 million?
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but actually he said that. He said I could sell them, but then I'd be living on a bench somewhere.
Right.
The answer is for me, no.
You're not worth. You don't have a net worth, even if you sold your house.
Right.
Man, I don't know. I thought you'd be worth more, man. Sorry. It's fucked up.
You're always fascinated with money in general.
No, I do enjoy. I just, again, because I know as a fan of this show, 2 contracts ago, I remember talking with my buddies. I bet they're all taken care of now.
Okay, and I'm sure most of us felt the same way, especially when they got to Sirius, right? Like they're all like he's definitely gonna, ante up and pay them whatever money.
Well, I guess I always thought that all of these different kind of iterations or pieces of the show, like you said, like if in the K-Rock days or the Infinity days when they were syndicating to different markets, or they got to deal with ETV to do the show, that they would spread the wealth, that somebody would get that all of them would get a little piece of the pie coming in, or even afterwards with when they were doing the the Howard TV stuff, that again, any kind of way or anything other than, I don't know, maybe Howard doing the stupid books, but anything other than that they were getting stuff that was directly tied to the show, that they were all sharing, at least getting a little piece of something. But that certainly doesn't appear to be the case.
God, no. And so I guess this is really, like Wiggy's too stupid to have read The Prince, but I think that was a Buchwald move completely, like to make sure that they're down and downtrodden. No, I don't think Howard's that calculating. I think he could be that calculating, but not smart enough to think that way.
Well, he's definitely greedy enough
and cheap enough. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, greedy and cheap enough. But you're right. I think Don Buchwald was probably the motivating force there, or just telling Howard, look, man, you could just keep more of the money if we do it this way. And that's probably all that needed to be said.
So here's a couple clips, guys, talking about the cheapness, that the staff pay, and it's really incredible. So here's one that Artie's talking about how 80% of the staff are broke.
But I can't start booking the show based on people's economics. Do you know what I mean? But if I do that, then it's really tough.
I know. I mean, 80% of the people who work here are broke. I mean, what are you going to do? It's shitty times.
So imagine you're on this fucking megalomaniacal assholes show, and you're starving. And wouldn't you be embarrassed to have that on your show? Like that like people complaining that they're not making money, and you're making all this. Like, how bad does it make your show look?
Well, yeah, and it kind of goes back or flows back into that whole discussion we just had about, loyalty, and wouldn't you be more beholden to somebody that, that spread the wealth or shared the wealth with you than you would? I mean, it's the same. It kind of goes to that same thing. I mean, it's like, you're right. It's embarrassing, to even be associated with the show. And it just brings down it makes the whole entity look, less classy, if you will.
Right. And that would be my concern, especially as an employer. I would never want to be looked at as a fucking tightwad. Howard has no problem looking like. Okay, so here's another clip. This is from Nick DiPaolo.
I'm a very childish person.
Right.
I operate on the level of a 6-year-old.
A very rich 6-year-old.
Well, let me tell you why. I cannot tolerate not having all the marbles. In other words, if I'm in a business, no one else should have success, just me.
I noticed that. I tried to get a job here at Sirius.
What happened?
$45 a show.
I know.
You really do have all the fucking marbles.
That's what I said. It's terrible.
That's what Jackie said.
$45 a show.
Oh my God, that's almost Riley Martin level of pay right there.
He got more for his piss jugs.
Yeah, wait, if we're talking salary negotiations, you've got to have some Riley in there, right?
I'd love to. Well, I do have some clips somewhere, but it would take a while to get back. And because they're Whack Packers, that's a whole other. There's a wrap-up show caller that's great, and he goes through it. So, but this one is from when Artie did his show with Nick, and Nick was gone, and Vincent Pastore was on the show talking about the generosity of James Gandolfini.
One of the great things about Jimmy is that he shared. You know,
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to mention no names, but when this guy that you used to work for got a raise, did he give you a piece of his raise?
You're right. Yeah, no,
Right.
sure you.
But that's what Jimmy did. When he got a
unbelievable,
raise, he would give us some money from his money.
Right.
You know, we got chunks.
So imagine, and Artie's like flustered. He doesn't want to admit it, but he's,
Right.
he's absolutely part of it. So this is a clip from the wrap-up show that's a little long, but we're gonna try to get through it, and then we'll wrap it up, guys.
Okay,
This
and-
is
I was just going to say, Fillmore, I'm sure you know this story too. I mean,
Yeah.
Gandolfini, rest in peace, was legendary for his generosity.
oh yes.
Have you heard the story about, I think they were wrapping, or I think they were just wrapping a season. I don't think it was the series finale, but
Okay.
he gave everyone, like the entire cast and crew, like Rolexes one
Yes.
year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and he didn't run out of money. He didn't. He died very prematurely and before his time.
Mhm.
But he didn't die broke. And that's the
No.
thing. That's the thing. I guess that's why I know personally I'll never be rich, because I can't understand that level of marble hoarding that Howard does. I can't understand it.
It's a pathology.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear about how much money that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos make, and I'm like, God, how much money? How much do you need? I mean, there's just so much. It's just beyond generational wealth, and it's like you can't take it with you. Look at King Tut.
No, well, he certainly tried his best. I think his workers, weren't his helpers buried with him, and the pets were buried with him as well.
I know the pets were. I think they stopped doing that, the workers thing, but yeah.
What, they didn't have workman's comp back then? Okay.
Exactly.
So this one's it's a comparison between him and Leno, and it's always a good. Two clips. The first one is him talking about. I love this one. It's just so telling.
At 11:30. But anyway, they're announcing today that, first of all, Jay Leno's such a douchebag. He's the number one late night guy. He gets like $20 million a year. He could be getting 50, 60 million a year, but he doesn't want it. Like, that just skeeves me out and makes me think he's a bigger asshole than I've ever. It's just like, oh, what is that? Like, what? Why is it you won't take more
Take the
money?
money, yeah.
Like, what are you trying to prove?
I love that.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Anyway,
I don't understand it, man. I swear to God, I don't. And I know you and I have talked about Jay Leno's generosity before, and again, he's a guy that'll never run out of money, but he's also done right by people, and people love him, and people would run through walls for him, but nobody's going to run through a wall for Wiggy.
Now, guys, we're going to go a little bit into the Stern contract stuff, because let's face it, what we really want to know is what he's making, and where the last bit of information that you can get online really ends. That's seemingly what we think is most accurate is this Fortune.com article from December 9th of 2010, and it was about the secondary contract that he got after the first Sirius contract. And it said what Howard Stern's, this is the name of it, Howard Stern's $400 million Sirius contracts means to the street. And so it says here, this time around, he seems to have had the same kind of cash deal as before, just without the stock. So $400 million for 5 years. Some of that money goes to production costs and salaries for the Stern show, and ultimately the figure won't be confirmed until SiriusXM makes necessary regulatory filing with the SEC. So I want you to read the section down below by Brett Harris, Gabelli and Company, and these are all analysts giving their take on the contract. And this is quite interesting.
Right. Oh, okay. So this is from an analyst, Brett Harris of Gabelli and Company. He says, I don't think Howard Stern is as important as he was 5 years ago, especially to Sirius, which has such a broad content lineup. But I do think Sirius wants to make sure nobody else has him, and they'd much rather have demand for Howard just sort of peter out over the next 5 years than just have a big newsworthy
Event, should say.
Yeah, event
even
that just gives people an excuse to cancel. The original deal was negotiated like most of their content deals when XM and Sirius were at war with programming. Since the merger in 2008, whenever a programming contract has come up for renegotiation, no matter who the talent is, they've come down significantly, on the order of 50%.
That's a huge drop off, by the way.
Yeah, that is.
And so this is one of the last times they actually threw numbers out. More recently, it's always been, reportedly worth 120 million. There's no way, in your learned opinion, there's no way he's making more now over the years than less.
No, I don't think so. And I think this analyst is spot on. I mean, you could even look, and you have to keep in mind, this is 2010, right? So, so he's talking, 2005 being 5 years ago, and 5 years into the future is 2015, which is, 6 years ago. So keep that in mind. But I think you're right. I mean, I guarantee you that Eminem and some of these other people that got these naming rights to those stations or channels they have on Sirius, there's no way they're raking in as much as it took to originally sign them.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what about that next paragraph is where it gets interesting.
Okay. And it goes on to say, when I pull a number out of the air, I'd say he goes from getting 100 million to getting 60 or 70 million, or a 30 or again, man, this is poorly edited, or a bad. 30 or 40% pay cut. I don't think they're going to get the 50% knockdown they got with, say, Martha Stewart, because he is the Oprah of radio. He's fantastic, but it'll probably be significant. He's going to get a lower total number, but they're not going to disclose it because they don't want to bruise his ego. Yeah, truer words have never been spoken there.
Right. And right now, guys, you could cue the Dan from Illinois caller who busted his balls about taking a pay cut.
Right. And I was thinking too about how they were referencing SEC disclosures and things like that Sirius has to file. I bet you if you really wanted to wade into, if you've ever seen a prospectus, those things are or an annual report from a company, those things are just as dense and mind-numbing and boring as all get out. But if you really wanted to go down the rabbit hole, I bet you could find some stuff in there. Yeah. But okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You want me to do the last paragraph?
Just the very last paragraph, and then I'll take the next guy.
Okay. Howard also probably negotiated to work a little less. No kidding. He often says, "Oh, I can't believe I'm doing this anymore. I should sit at home and enjoy my money." So maybe he goes from 4 to 3 days, which will be good for Sirius because ultimately they'll be paying him less. Peter Loria, and then it's got a site here. Peter Loria of the Daily Beast seemed to confirm that Stern will scale back his workload some, which is exactly what happened. So they were right on.
That's right. The next analyst is named Barton Crockett from Lazard Capital. In the second paragraph, it says, for Stern, it's probably important to face the world and say you didn't take a big pay cut, even though God knows he's still making enough money to pay the rent. I think from Sirius's perspective, trend costs overall are trending down, and Howard Stern's a very big component. Historically, they've been spending $350 million a year on programming, of which $80 million in cash was Howard. I'd argue it's not a massive change, but if anything, I'd shade a little lower. We would guess that maybe 1 to 2 million subscriptions came into Sirius 5 years ago because of Howard Stern, and that would basically be close to a wash with what they're paying him. If he left, and he lost all those subscriptions. You'd have to lower subscriptions, but you'd also have to lower revenues and costs, which would be close to a wash in terms of earnings. This is worse than the things.com.
Well, it's so lazy with the editing. All they did was what is it?
Voice
Microsoft. Microsoft spell check, and then no human eyes ever saw this until
right because it is a word. It is a word that it's still a word. It's not spelled incorrectly. It's just grammatically wrong and.
Well, exactly like in that other paragraph where I think what was it? It was like an or instead of an of or something like that. Right. It's not misspelled, but it's like you said. I don't know if spell check probably wouldn't have caught it. So yeah, because it's not misspelled. But Jesus.
Yeah. So and this is in reality, you wouldn't lose all those subscriptions. You'd lose a fraction of what he brought in because they've been around 5 years and they probably found other things they like on satellite radio. Now, I don't know that that's true. No. I do know that since then that's when they started forcing the shit in cars. They started getting car contracts and doing their best to shoehorn Sirius XM players into stuff and giving people free or very low subscription based memberships, and then try to that's the heroin. You give them a little sample and they'll want to stay later on. But how many stories have we heard of people canceling?
Right.
Over the years?
Exactly. And what do you think about, God, you could do a whole show on this, but what do you, in a nutshell, what do you think the future of satellite radio is, if there is one?
I believe, and someone else might somebody might beg to differ, but I believe that they got Stitcher, Sirius XM paid for Pandora and Stitcher to just create a larger entity to be worth something more in the future for a future sale. Like if they want to get absorbed by some other conglomerate, because who really needs their SIM cards to get the show? And, like who really needs this hardware? You remember what it was like back in the early Sirius days. You had the fucking receiver. You needed, even on a clear day, you'd lose the signal. Didn't matter what fucking piece of shit you had. And these days, especially, no one needs that. And so they have to make their money based on subscriptions. But even the subscription-based model is dying it's dying a slow death. So
yeah,
take less money for subscriptions and try to get more volume, or make ads worth it. But ads are never going to be worth what they were in terrestrial days.
And then there's this huge sunk costs that they've got to pony up to with the equipment. And I mean, not necessarily on our end, but on their end. I mean, from what I understand about these satellites, they degrade. And so they've got to, at certain points in time, shoot up new satellites to put in orbit. And as you can imagine, that ain't cheap. I mean, getting a ride on a rocket ship, on a private rocket ship is expensive. I mean, crazily so, especially when, I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago when my wife and I went to Bisbee, Arizona, which is in the southeast corner of Arizona. And there's, Arizona's a fairly big state, and there's areas where there is literally nothing. There's just flat out desert. There's nothing for miles around. So
sure,
I think my wife flipped on the radio. She's like, let's listen to some music. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There's, nobody's in sight. And then I made the comment, I go, see, now is when I miss Sirius.
Right.
Because, you could do it. But think about it. Most people nowadays in that similar situation, and if I would have been driving alone, I would have just listened to a podcast. But
sure,
my taste in podcasts and my wife's are completely different, right? So I wouldn't have anything to put on. But yeah, I think satellite radio is cool with that respect. But podcasting would be the way to go. And if you're in the middle of nowhere and you hadn't downloaded a podcast, you're screwed. But
yeah. I mean, unless you want to Bluetooth connect your phone to your dashboard and then stream, hopefully your data plan is good enough. You're not going to get fucked at the end of the month.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what different phone companies offer in the States versus Canada and, in Asia, but at any rate, there was the one lone Arbitron ratings done for Sirius XM was done in 2007. And this is important because a lot of people still don't even know about this and they think we're bullshitting with the numbers. It says, before the Sirius XM merger, Daily News writer David Hinckley reported that Arbitron has released its first ever ratings for XM and Sirius covering April to June of 2007. And they show that in an average week, 1.225 Gee, why 1.25 million listeners at some point heard Stern. That's the total for the week. So at any given moment, Stern has maybe a few 100,000 listeners. Any way you look at it, that's a sorry ratings number for the former terrestrial radio god. Now, okay, the number, since they merged, numbers went up, but at the time, I seem to recall, if you were on XM and you didn't have a plan to have Stern, to listen to Stern, you had to pay extra. It wasn't like you merged and suddenly you got a thing. You had to pay extra for that.
Right.
And a lot of people just wouldn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And God, I remember, it's funny because you're saying 1.5 million. I can remember when I had Sirius and I stopped listening to Stern because I just couldn't take it anymore.
Sure.
Post Artie. And I actually left even a little bit before Artie because it was just going downhill at the time. And, it's when he was getting in fights with the staff and his addiction really got the best of him. And you could kind of tell that the Titanic had already hit the iceberg and it was filling with water. But, I can remember sometimes going through the channels and it would land on Howard 100 or 101. And I would do anything to get it off there before, I was like, God, I don't want to be, hopefully this click doesn't count to go toward them. But it's crazy. But I don't know. With those big fixed costs, that makes sense. They may be either they're probably doing one of two things. Either they're trying to position themselves, like you said, to be bought, and then maybe even get rid of the satellite portion of it and just go straight up with podcasts and streaming. And maybe, I don't know what that would do for Howard. He'd have to join the program some kind of way. Knowing him, he would probably only want to stream from, I don't know, 7 a.m. Eastern time or 6 a.m. Eastern time to 9, like he, stupidly does. Because what does he always say? Radio is a what is that quote that he says is a something medium?
Oh, so he said it's a habitual medium.
Oh,
medium. And I love that. I love that. I think I put it into an intro where he goes, if you're not 5 days a week morning drive, then you're doing your labor, you're doing your listeners a disservice, and you're not doing your job. Right. And then I got a clip of Stuttering John saying, how about 4 days a week? That's the same clip. He goes, nah, you can't do that. And then immediately there's a clip from Sirius. He goes, I'm not down with the 5 days a week schedule. And then Robin goes, you can't, that came with the deal. He goes, yeah, in terrestrial, you can do 5 days a week. Satellite's different.
Yeah, you should have mixed in that thing he told Letterman, we're going to work some Fridays. Don't worry about that.
I love that clip. That's definitely going to be part of the intro if I have enough space. I usually try to keep those under 3 minutes. So either way, we only had a few more clips to play, guys, before we took you to the end of this particular thing. One of these is a clip from the same wrap-up show that we played earlier, and this is Benji. And the context is Bob Levy just bitching and saying, look, I help these guys on the road because you guys aren't paying them enough, which is a hell of an indictment to allow on the air. And so this is Benji.
One of the things that pissed me off the most, what Levy said, was about I hire guys from the show.
Yeah.
And you owe me because of that.
Right. That's almost like saying, you don't pay them enough, I'll pick up the slack so you owe me.
That's something that you blurt out and is just a dumb thing to say out loud.
But see, you don't blurt that out. You've been obviously thinking that for a long time and then let it out.
Well, it's not like saying it, Bowie. It is saying it. I love that. And then there's the next clip that follows. I believe it's a similar week, but not the exact same show. And this is Richard getting in on it.
See, my guess is everybody in the back office except Gary and John Hine are sweating about Howard retiring in 3 years.
See, that's the better. That's the better point.
God.
That was the original question.
I'm sweating.
And I know Richard and Sal. I bet you are absolutely about what's going to happen.
But yeah, at some
like, what kind of if that isn't an indictment, man, I don't know what is.
Right. I mean, Jesus. It couldn't have been, leave it up to Richard to just tell him like it is.
some Kansas honesty.
Yeah, some Midwestern honesty, just straight and to the point. I mean, other than Bowie and Hine, and how much of that? God, every time I hear about John Hine and that stupid jump the shark with $1 million. I mean, $1 million is a lot of money, but
sure,
they make it sound like it's 100 million.
Well, that's just a number they threw out. We don't know for a fact that it wasn't more. Because back in the .com days, I mean, people were buying and selling these websites for extraordinary amounts of money. Some obviously way more than others. I mean, the value changes. But does anybody go on JTS anymore?
I was gonna say, yeah, which directly led to the second recession, that that really bad recession that happened because everything was just overvalued. It was insane.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then someone asked me, would you ever start a robiniswrong.com website anymore? And I go, she doesn't do the news anymore. If the hosting wasn't if we got a certain amount, yeah, that'd be amazing. But you could just do it yourself. I could just collect the fuck ups and put them in, intros. At any rate,
I was just going to say, yeah, her whole role now, it's just shifted. It's no longer news. She's just there to be that, that token, in all sense of the word, shield for Howard. That's it.
Totally. And this is a great clip of a wrap-up show caller talking about Wiggy being a tightwad. So listen up.
The show's going downhill fast. Well, it is, but of course we have our callers to go to. Tommy in Minnesota, you're the first caller on the wrap-up show.
Hey, guys, look, let's get off him being sick or on drugs. To me, the point is when he's not in, the show suffers dramatically.
And they're talking about Artie, of course, who's absent or was absent for a day and whatever. So that's the context.
In my eyes or ears.
How do you think it's up? How do you think it suffers? Like, what's missing?
He's one of the best elements of the show, without a doubt. I mean, look, Howard's still the king, but I think he's slipping. A lot of the times I'm more interested in the anecdotes Artie has. It bothers me when Howard talks over him and stuff. And I also like to address that, listen, there's just way too much money at play. A lot of money's being generated off this show. Granted, the lion's share should go to Howard, but I think he's older. He's walking away with way too much of the money.
This guy, you imagine they got a big red flag on his number. We're going to keep going because there's another clip that we're going to play that dovetails into this. And the guy really goes into, he makes total sense if you want to believe the nonsense that the Pelican goes on with in terms of his success, the rate of how many listeners he's got supposedly and how much money they're generating and blah, blah, blah.
To spread the wealth and entice someone like Artie to stick around and not worry so much about finding, revenue from other ventures.
So you think
it's Artie, it's other people.
So do you think everybody here is underpaid except for Howard?
Without a doubt. When a guy could get an $80 million bonus, I mean, bro, you got to take care of the people that are around you. I mean, it's just sick. I mean,
well,
he deserves the bulk of that money, but he's underpaying everyone around him, and I don't know how he sleeps in that. I really don't.
And that particular caller had been on many times defending the back office staff in terms of how little they were making and how you can't really like the old trope that, if everybody left tomorrow, he'd be a great interviewer. He'd be a great, he could put anybody in there and make them, successful and make them funny. Well, clearly that's not happening because if you listen to the show today, it's a train wreck generally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, come on. I mean, it's funny you talk about this caller. I guarantee you he's on that. He's probably on that. What do they call it? The red list or whatever.
Red list.
Yeah, exactly.
But this next clip is also from this one has to do with, I don't remember if it's the exact same time period. It might be a little later. But he's basically doing a comparison between Jay Leno and his practices versus the way Wiggy does it.
Gotcha. Let's go to the phones. Tony in Hoboken, you're on the wrap-up show.
Hey guys, I just want to ask Gary, if it does come to that and Howard, doesn't re-up, would you ever consider working as producer for like a douchebag like Jay Leno? And do me a favor, keep me on the line because I have another follow-up question related to that.
I've said a million times that my biggest fear is, first of all, I don't know that I'm qualified to be Jay Leno's producer. I think in my mind I am, but I don't have that much TV experience. But I've always said my worst nightmare is...
Yeah, I was going to say he's not qualified to produce anything.
That when this period of time comes, that I have to take what's available to me. And, if I'm out of work for 3 months and Jay Leno's interested in having me be his producer, I'd probably do it. Because that's, you got to, if there's no other jobs available and that job's available, how could you turn down a job like that?
So true. And on the plus side, I mean, you're looking at a good Christmas. Hey, I have a question related to that. I like Howard a lot. He's been nice to give me so many years of entertainment, but can we...
Okay, so before we go into this, already this guy is doing he's got roundhouse. He's getting kidney punches in because he's praising Jay Leno. He's using it as an example of something a step up that Gary would love to do. And at this point, Gary, and he'll admit it, he said, "I'm always looking for work." He admits that I'm always looking for a better gig. Well, but I don't want to leave here. He's caught between having to say this is the best gig in the world and I would never leave and stuff. But if the price was right, of course he would.
Oh my God. And then, talent wise, he's only, if you want to call it producer, the only production job that I think he's qualified for would be to have on a little cap and holding a cup standing next to an organ grinder. If anybody under 30 or under 50 understands that reference.
Anyway,
I love this caller because he just nails them to the floor.
We have an honest discussion. I'm just curious. I mean, the show makes like 80 million a month cash, $1 billion plus per year cash. So he's on the same level of power as Leno. Why do you think he could easily afford to do Leno's thing of like 1,000 per year for every year? This speaks to the Christmas Santa pending issue. Why does he not elect to do that? It would be an infinitesimally small part of the budget of the profits of the show. We're talking about $1 billion a year in cash.
First of all, it's not.
Okay, now the Bowie's spin skills are so bad. Whenever he said, you've known this from listening in the past, he is the worst when you confront him with actual intelligent banter.
Right, because he's unintelligent.
You mean like the organ grinder would stand a better chance at arguing with this guy?
Yes, yeah. Okay. Luigi the organ grinder would stand a much better chance than freaking Bowie.
Okay.
$1 billion a year in cash.
It has to be.
How?
I'll tell you how, because you guys, and Howard can't have it both ways. He likes to say that the show has he took the Sirius subscriptions from like 600,000 to, I think you guys were at 8 million just before the merger. I'm not going to count the XM people, and I'll even take 2 million off the 8 million that he took it to, because say 2 million of those people legitimately are not just
Tony. I'm going to stop you for a second. I know where you're going.
This is my favorite because the guy's throwing numbers at him. He's saying, "Look, if you did bring 1 million subscribers and they're bona fide Stern subscribers, that money has to be attributed to Howard on some level. There's got to be some internal auditing system at XM and Sirius to know how many listeners he has. There's just no way they don't know."
Right, and I mean, I get where the guy's coming from, but I will say in Bowie's defense, in a sense,
and he needs it.
Yeah. This guy's numbers are way out of whack, but I understand where he's coming from. I get the gist. And I also agree with you. There is no way that Sirius, that they can't track, how long somebody is on one of their channels or whatever. I mean, they claim that they have no idea, but you just know that's not the truth.
That's right. And the other thing is, so this guy's going on numbers that Howard has projected, and we know they're bullshit, inflated numbers, but
Correct.
he's going to make the perfect argument, the logical argument that if Howard says they're this much, then this is how much money they have to be making at a bare minimum, and this is profits. This is not coming out of his budget, so it shouldn't matter to Howard, and people should be able to share in that.
Have you looked? Tony? Hold on a second. Have you looked at our stock, Tony? Tony, have you looked at our stock lately?
I hear
the company.
That's not a real answer because
it is a real answer.
But Howard can go into Sirius and say, my show is whatever your stock is value is. That's your problem, executives. The fact is, my show is producing $85 million in cash a month. That's a staggering number.
All right.
I mean, how can?
I mean, we can argue the numbers back and forth, left and right, but let's just go under the assumption that Howard has a lot of money.
So John Hein, he is the organ grinder, and he's not doing any better.
Exactly.
Totally missing the point.
Right.
Yeah.
We discussed this yesterday, and I believe the day before.
I don't think he's talking about his personal wealth. I'm not talking about that.
Okay. So the show generates a lot of revenue.
That's not even the word for it. $85 million.
We got Tony. We understand you. Take a break. Take a breath. We understand. We get your point.
So then why can't he say, listen, guys, I'm giving you $1 billion a year in cash. I want a couple 100,000 earmarks so I can do the right thing by my staff. I mean, you can say Leno's a soulless robot or an android, but the fact is he embraces sharing his wealth with staff that he knows will never taste his lifestyle. How come?
So you know this is burning Wiggy in the limo ride back.
Yeah, and he's spot on, and it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Howard doesn't want the same thing for you guys.
But you're asking two different questions. Leno gives personally, and now you're asking why doesn't Howard go to the company? But neither one of those matters. I think we've discussed it 2 or 3 days in a row that Howard felt sort of burned by who was on the list, who wasn't happy with their gift, who felt they were left out. Tony, we've answered it 50 times. I don't know how to answer it any more times.
Okay, now just stay tuned, guys. This is the cornerstone of the argument.
Let me guess. He's going to say, what do you do for a living?
I wish. And I'm going to put that clip in there as the intro.
But you're not you're answering around it. I mean, you bring up issues which are not germane to Leno's solution because no one would have any qualms because Scott Salem he'd get his amount because he's been there a long time and an intern would.
Tony, we just talked about this. We just talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, and if you heard
the show yesterday, I'm just not going to talk about it. Get rid of Tony, and I will answer Tony without him yelling over me. We said that inevitably somebody's going to be pissed off about the amount of money they get, even though he's bringing up the Jay Leno formula for how many years you've been here. Somebody's still going to get pissed off.
And then what they're bringing up, of course, is for every year that a Leno staffer was at the Tonight Show, they got a $1,000 bonus collectively, like for Christmas. So 10 years there would get 10 grand, and this was all the way down the line as long as they were still employed there, obviously.
Well, yeah, and Bowie's argument or counter argument is just stupid. Not surprising, but think about it. It's like, let's say you work for a company, you get hired in October, and then and you just started there, and then Christmas comes around 2 months later, and the company announces, oh hey, we're giving out bonuses for people that have worked a year, calendar year, whatever. So yeah, you got hired in October. You're not going to get a bonus. I mean, are you going to be disappointed? I mean, I guess maybe, but you're not going to be pissed. You're going to understand that. You know what I mean? But yeah, so Bowie's argument about, everybody's just going to be pissed off with the Leno formula. Somebody's invariably going to be pissed off. That's not true. I think most people are fairly rational when it comes to things like that,
That's right. And the context, guys, is the Christmas gift, the Secret Santa thing, whatever. When this was when Wiggy, 2 years in a row, he decided, he was like, I'm not doing it for everybody. The news department's not getting anything from me. And then Penny Crone and Lisa G came in and gave him shit. And rightfully so, because you hired these people to cover you. And then he decided, well, that was a big mistake because then they were actually doing their jobs and finding out what his ring cost him. And he went on like one of the whatever QVC or something and got Beth's ring. That's that's where everybody goes. And then finally he put the kibosh on certain stories, which was a complete opposite from they'll have total autonomy, they can cover whatever they like freely. Yeah, my ass.
Yeah,
and
right.
then And then he decided, look, I buy for 300 people. I can't buy for another person. If he gave literally $1,000 to the entire staff, he'd still be like it would be a drop of chump change.
No, remember that one year when he gave those tins of popcorn that you get like at Staples, where it's like cheddar, what is it? Cheddar cheese, white cheddar, and caramel corn or whatever. And that was, that was the gift. And and I could hear him bitching about that. 300 cans of kettle corn, come on.
My favorite was, so there's a guy on eBay who's selling watches, like Stern Show watches that Howard drew the sketch of his face on this as part of the watch face, and then like microphones as the hour hand and the minute hand.
Oh God.
And some of them are like guess watches, which might be, I don't know, $100 back in the day. And then there was one brand that's a little slightly higher end, but for the most part, it's just cheap shit. And then this guy's trying to offload it for thousands of dollars. Like there's somebody out there who wants the Stern warehouse. At any rate, his gifts have been notoriously bad. On the Jackie interview, it was talked over a bit, but he explained how he was giving out swag that the company had left over, cameras.
Oh, right.
Jackie
Those cameras. I
cameras,
remember that.
Canon like point and shoot, and with no bag and no cord attached because it was a demo.
Right. Yeah, it was like their promo stuff that they were just handing out. Yeah, I remember that. That God, how cheap can you get? How little can you value your employees? I mean, and then you want all this, you demand all this loyalty from them. I'm telling you, I don't. We were talking off the air about that movie, The Death of Stalin, and this every time we get into this, it reminds me of that, with like Wiggy being like Stalin, and before the body's even cold, these guys are just heaping dirt and doing whatever they can to maneuver and jockey amongst themselves, but there's no love lost for the dead guy.
No way. And we'll keep going because it's a long clip, but either way, guys, I know that you will enjoy this one.
Also, Leno doesn't have any kids. Howard has 3 kids he has to send to college. And if you heard Scott Salmon here yesterday, clearly he has a firm grasp of the realities of the economy, and he explained how he's not upset over holiday gifts or parties or anything like that. So, Tony, thank you for your call. We tried to get through, but I think we've beaten this to death over the past couple of days. Let's go to Rob in New York. Rob, you're on the wrap-up show.
Hey, Gary, if the show does end in 2 years, can you retire?
No.
Okay, so that was an emphatic no. Like there was not even a question.
No.
And I doubt that's because Gary lives so extravagantly. He does those concerts, but he's looking for free concert tickets. And he's not looking to spend that much money except once in a while. And he's not a gambler that we know of. He's not a drug addict.
Yeah, it's and again, look at where he lives. Look at the part of the country that they live in and have to work in. And you gotta factor that in. I mean, NYC is the most expensive place to live in the United States, and I know that Gary's out in somewhere in Connecticut, right? But it's still pricey, and the train, the I don't know how he gets to work. I guess on the train and all that good stuff. But I mean, all of those costs come into being, and he probably has I imagine a pretty big nut with that, as big as that house is.
Yep.
And he's got to be on that treadmill and keep running on it.
That organ is just grinding faster and faster.
Exactly.
Okay. Not even close. So, and Fred mentioned the same thing himself. So, is it fair to say that would Howard be mad if you were out putting yourself out there looking for other employment? Because if he's not paying your bills in 2 years, I don't see how he can be upset if you're out there looking for something else. If you can't retire in 2 years, you should be looking for something else right now.
Well, in some ways, I'm always looking, in the sense that
I love it. Because around this time, he's angling with Rob Burnett and Jimmy Kimmel and trying to get some kind of producing job way away from Wiggy.
Right, and he's boxed himself. He's painted himself into a corner at this point because there are no more A-list guests. No one is beating down Wiggy's door. There, less and less publicists for him to deal with and try to make connections to get that next job.
That's right.
And he wants to play like this persona of his is a bumbling idiot. But I think most people in the know that that's not a facade.
They think he really is.
They know he really is.
Yeah, of course.
Talk to people, and we always talk that I'll be done in 2 years. But I have to be honest with you, I don't want to leave here till it's done.
Nice save.
I don't want to leave here till it's done.
And Rob, I mean, people in the industry are fully aware of what's going on with this show. So if Howard does,
people in the industry don't give a flying fuck about Stern. They didn't then, and they still don't. When they do get these guests, I want to know how much of it is finagling and how much of it is sheer desperation in a pandemic.
Well, and I was just listening to Hein, and it made me think there for a second. What is it about Hein that gives him a pass? Where Buchwald has lined him up with that stupid Yankee show that he's on. He's on TV. He knows next to nothing about baseball, but yet there's probably a million guys that would literally kill to have that job, yet Hein gets it. And Wiggy doesn't give him any grief about it. He doesn't bust his balls like he does Gary or Ronnie or these other guys.
How does he skate?
Yes.
That's a very good question. And the truth is, I have no idea unless there's some stream of income or whatever that he gets or like voiceover work or something that keeps him being a steady earner. So Buchwald's like he's somewhere in the contract. You don't fuck on him, or you can talk about certain things, but not this. But he seems to be, you're right, almost more protected than Bowie, certainly.
Right. Bowie talks about all the time, or and some of the other guys did too, again, about this whole jump the shark thing. And even Howard has alluded to it, where they, for some reason, they just hold that in such reverence, that, oh my God, he made this money. And, like you said, how Howard loves to have an earner, like, like his wife, Beth, and and how that means so much to him. So maybe, and again, we're dealing with a 79 IQ. So maybe the fact that Hein, is a known earner and was able to parlay a stupid website into $1 million or multi-million dollars, gives him enough, elevates him enough where, Buchwald's taking him on as a full-on client, and he doesn't get the guff that these other guys get.
How about this? I'll throw this at you, counselor. What if he's just working for cheap?
Well, yeah, maybe.
As a habit, like just enough to cover his nut so that he doesn't have to dip into his jump the shithead money. And I mean, that's the only way I can figure it, because he's talentless. He has no, he's got the personality of dead sperm. I don't know how he gets hosting jobs. I don't know how I don't hate him like other people have a vicious hatred towards him, but I certainly don't understand the appeal. He sounds milquetoast. He sounds worse than that. He sounds like like stale baguettes from the Mesozoic period.
I don't get it either. I don't, and you're right. I don't necessarily have that visceral kind of hate for him that a lot of people do. However, I understand it. I get where they're coming from completely. But yeah, man, I don't know how he gets to skate.
You're not in Hein hate town, but you can see it without a telescope.
Exactly.
All right, let's continue.
Make that declaration. They'll know sort of by default that Gary is available if they wanted to pursue him.
Yeah, but he gets mad when if Stutter and John leaves. Under those circumstances, a little weird. You can see it still irks Howard a little bit. Now, Billy West, he leaves. Now, these guys are just trying to take care of their families. If Howard does make this $500 million or whatever it is, a ridiculous number, for as long as you and Fred have been with him, if he takes 10 of that and gives you 5, Fred 5, you could probably retire. And that's
to give Jason Will, to give $1 million to Jason, $1 million to Will.
No.
$500,000 to John because he hasn't been here as long.
Okay, so Bowie's doing his best. He's like, what's it called? He's doing he's like an octopus trying to catch a million fly balls, but he just can't do. He's just flopping around.
Listen, you can defend him all you want, Gary. He's your
But
boss
you can't
right
tell
now.
somebody how to spend their money.
When it's all over,
If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be here.
That's
so
not what I'm saying.
I don't expect Howard to fund me for the rest of my life. I made the deals that I made. I'm happy with what I have, and I can move on when I want to. You seem to have an issue with it.
We should also get to fuck Beth every once in a while.
If Jay Leno came knocking now with a guarantee for 5 years or 10 years of employment at a serious, yearly rate, would you take it?
I would of course seriously consider it. When you say Howard got mad at John for leaving, Howard didn't get mad at John for leaving. Howard got mad at the way John left.
Yeah, he got mad because John didn't give him the opportunity to torpedo the fucking job. Let's be honest.
Exactly. And God, did you hear that lead balloon joke that Benji stuck in there
Benji
about
dropped.
that? Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, how does that guy pull down a paycheck?
That one's a whole other saga that we may not ever go into. But his sister did get a plug on the show. The whatever, what was it? I don't remember what foundation, but some charitable bullshit foundation. I have the clip, and one day we'll go into it. But and Richie Wilson, with all due respect to Richie, saying that Benji is brilliant. If he is, he's saving his brilliance for something else because it ain't on the fucking Howard Stern show. I love Richie, but I would not. Brilliant and Benji are not two words that are that go together in my view. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on this one.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, some of these people come across and act like he's some kind of modern day Andy Kaufman, and I'm like, what are you guys thinking?
If by that you wish he was dead, then I agree. Let's continue.
I think we all agreed that we probably could not have paid John what he got, and we would have said, listen, we can't match that. You go do that. It was that John never gave anybody that opportunity.
Well, if he knew that you couldn't match it, why would he even bother going to you? And the other thing is, when people decide they want to move on, they don't necessarily need to give their fucking employer a chance to match anything. You can decide to leave and take another job. What is this, like the fucking mafia? You didn't go to. It's like when Sonny's daughter goes to Michael in The Godfather Part 2, and it's I'd like to get married to Uncle Michael. What do you do? I got a degree in fine arts. How do you expect to support my niece with that degree in fine arts? And and that's a whole other saga. I don't mean to get into Stuttering Johnville. We're going to eventually do that, and this is one you called for when we started the podcast. But it requires so many clips and such a long. It's such a saga. We have to do it right, and we're not going to just fucking do it with one and done, and that's it, because there's just too much.
Right. But it's funny listening to Bowie just tap dance around this stuff. I mean, and you're absolutely right. Howard Wiggy is just pissed off that he didn't have the chance to torpedo it, to make calls, and to get him blackballed. But Leno probably would have hired him anyway. I mean, I think again, I don't want to stray too far into it either. I think after a while, after actually a short time, Leno figured out what he got in Stuttering John, which wasn't a whole hell of a lot.
It was an Edsel. It was a spare tire for an Edsel. No, that aspect of it is actually kind of interesting because I have a source, not a primary source, but one that I believe is actually spot on because of the nature of this source, and the inner machinations of how John got that job. Which John will tell you one thing in his book, and he only knows so much because he wasn't involved in the hiring. He just got hired, but the inner workings were actually a little more interesting. And so when we get to that, I think a lot of people will really find it illuminating and pretty predictable.
I made a deal and left before anybody could do anything about it, and we thought that for the amount of time that he'd work with us, he should have there was a way to do it where he could have ended up where he was and everyone would have been happy.
Well, Rob asks an interesting.
No, there wasn't.
No way.
Leno showed, like, the Tonight Show showed up Howard basically. And they basically, but that's the way he saw it. He didn't. He as an employer, he could have went, "That's great, man. You got a way. You springboarded to a much better gig, and I'm making all the money I need to make. So what do I care? Good, God bless you. No way. No, do not get ahead. Do not get ahead." Stay down, lackey.
Question in a roundabout way, but Leno's got this new show, 10 o'clock, for whatever reason. He wants, a different producer, and he contacts you. How do you handle something like that at this point?
Listen, Howard would be the first person to say that everybody has to explore everything that's brought to him.
Right.
Sure.
Fucking torpedo Artie's, what do you call it, tryout for the Late Late Show. Fucking prick.
Oh, my gosh. Well, who was that producer that left to, he bicycled around the country or something like that, and Wiggy just shat all over him.
That was the guy, Stussy. I think John Stuskovich or something like that. Mm-hmm. We're gonna make that part of a combination farewell, so long farewell episode, because he went far. He was looking to do like some farm techniques or whatever, and develop some farming techniques. And actually, he's doing fairly well for himself, as far as I know.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And but that's a fantastic story because they couldn't shit on him enough.
Right. Yeah. You would have thought he, stole something personally from Wiggy. I mean, it was really bad. And the guy just seemed like like kind of a modern day hippie, and he just wanted to do his own thing. And, like you said, get back to nature or whatever. It's like, yeah, dude, go ahead. If that floats your boats and you can afford it, wonderful.
Yeah.
He does that too. So of course, if he came knocking, I would listen to what he had to say. They're talking about a million different things. Do I want to move to Los Angeles? Is it guaranteed for X amount of years? But if he said, I've got a 5-year guaranteed contract for X amount of dollars, and the money was worth it, I'd probably go to Howard and say, I got a pretty good opportunity here. Are you staying or leaving? And if he says, I don't know, I'd say I'd have to take it. If he says, I'm staying, I'd probably be less inclined to take it.
And what kind of an idiot is Bowie to say this, knowing what he knows about John and how John left? And knowing that Gary said, well, look, we're jealous of you, John. She told Stuttering John, we're happy for you and we're jealous. But Gary couldn't say it. It had to be Mary Delabate to say it to John.
Right. And knowing how Howard is. I mean, if he would have told him that, as soon as he left the room, he would be on the phone with Buchwald and giving him marching orders to torpedo whatever offer that was.
Completely. And so it's for him to defend Wiggy here. I understand his position, but it makes zero sense knowing what he knows about Stuttering John. That's just my 2 cents.
Right. The difference there with Stuttering John is that you would go to Howard to discuss it before anything was done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, of course, I talked to them a little bit, but I'd see what they were offering.
Benji, how about you? If a writing gig like that came along,
I like Gary says. First of all, we have such a great environment here.
Fuck.
It's hard to see, like, it's hard to imagine like a more fun environment.
Can I?
God, it's not too hard. Knowing what we know, Benj. Sorry, you're just as bad in this case. And the thing is, I do believe that Benji is smart enough to know that they're full of shit, and that I understand him being foxy about this.
Mm-hmm.
Being a little cagey. Gary, it just seems like Stockholm syndrome, like battered woman syndrome. Like, I gotta defend him. Benji, it comes across more calculated, which I totally understand. Playing the game. With Bowie, he's playing the game, but it's fear-based. It's not based on, look, I know. It doesn't sound like he really knows.
Right, but I think, too, that Benji, like his sister, is connected. So I think Benji, for being the hack that he is, he will always probably land on his feet because of his sister's connections. Bowie, on the other hand, he's got nothing. Nothing. Yeah, absolutely nothing.
He can get like Springsteen cover band tickets maybe, and the Badlands will come on the show. Howard, are you interested?
Can I jump on that? Okay, look, Benji. We love Benji to death. He dresses the way he wants when he comes in. He sort of has, there's rules, but in a way there's no rules. So if Benji goes to work on a more structured show, it's going to be different. You're going to be asked.
I can't imagine, unless I have as much independence as I do here, like not working for myself.
Well, hence, bring in Marcy Turk, and all of a sudden that's gone, and you're still there.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not going to play the rest of that clip because it goes quite a long way. But this last one I'm going to play is really one of those. I mean, we played earlier one of the Jay Leno bitching clips that he did. But in 2012, here's another article. I'll send you the link. This article from the BBC talks about the pay cut that Jay Leno made in 2012 to pay the staffers whose jobs were threatened. So what happened was, of course, this is the Conan O'Brien fracas where they paid Conan off when they switched the times of the shows and gave Conan the Tonight Show and then put Leno on earlier, which was just a stupid boneheaded move.
Right.
So it says here, U.S. TV host Jay Leno has taken a pay cut to save the jobs of other members of staff working on the popular late night talk show, The Tonight Show. Some 20 staff reportedly lost their jobs on Friday as broadcaster NBC moves to reduce the show's costs. What I'm sure happened was they lost all kinds of sponsors in the interim through Conan's show and didn't get them back. So, yeah, in order to make the same profits, they are going to have to cut salaries or get other ad revenue, which, the short-term solution, of course, what are execs going to do? Fuck you, you're fired.
Right, exactly.
So it said here, Jay's foremost concern is for the wonderful people who work with him at The Tonight Show, said Bruce Bobbins, a spokesman for Leno. Reports suggest his salary will drop by more than $5 million to $20 million. What he did was necessary to ensure their well-being, said Mr. Bobbins. It said reports suggest his annual pay will now be closer to $20 million. He reportedly brings home another $15 to $20 million annually through personal appearances as a stand-up. That brings us into the Wiggy rant about Leno. So let's see if I can find it here.
What happened with Jay Leno? Can you explain that to me?
Of course. You want the truth?
Yes.
It's all horseshit.
Okay.
Bullshit. It's a smokescreen.
Explain, please.
All right. Well, the newspaper story you read is that when Jay Leno was on, when they moved his show to prime time, they increased the budget because it was a prime time show. Then he went back to late night and he brought all those people with him. And
now the context is also, by the way, like he's getting it all wrong. Like he's you'll listen to him. This is where you guys were asking, why do we call him 79? Well, this is one of those myriad of reasons. Just wait.
Because of ratings and revenue, NBC decided to cut his budget. And so they fired 20 people on The Tonight Show.
Oh.
And Jay, because he's such a great fucking guy, decided to take a pay cut so that he could keep some people's jobs. All right, so now when I read
that's horrible.
Here's the truth.
Yeah.
All right, tell me what it really means.
Okay, here's what it really means.
So, Cary, predict it. What does it really mean?
Shoot, something just completely non-logical. I mean, yeah, how horrible it is for somebody to sacrifice a little to help other people. That's horrific.
This is the thing I don't understand, because we have all the thing that we're going to go into with Stuttering John, so this dovetails into it a little bit. And guys, we apologize for the overlap. Why do you think he has why do you think that Jay Leno thing is such a vicious, open, gaping wound for him?
I can't really explain it other than just this unhealthy obsession with marbles.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, because it doesn't make any sense any other kind of way, and the fact that he's a non-human and he completely doesn't understand what it is to be a normal human being. I just think that most people, I don't know, I guess it's maybe how you look at people. I've always thought that most people are kind of inherently good and would do the right thing most of the time. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that's just something that Wiggy doesn't have any kind of concept of understanding.
Well, part of the thing is that it has occurred to me in the past that Jay's response has always been amity. He never fires back. He's always been just, taking whatever shots and not responding, which may it may have angered Howard even more because he's completely made irrelevant by Jay not mentioning him. But you'd think during this whole walking things back, like apologizing to Kathy Lee, apologizing to fucking Rosie, Ellen, all these people that he was at war with, why does he maintain that he's still pissed off at Jay when all these people he was way more vicious to and for a lot longer?
Right, but I think, I don't know, I think in Ellen and I guess in a lesser degree Rosie, but if you look at the time when he made it, you know, Kathy Lee, Rosie, and Ellen were still in positions to quote unquote help him. You know what I mean? Especially with the market that, you know, Buchwald told him that he's going to get, that, you know, middle America or middle American female women are going to fall in love with Wiggy. I mean, it's just, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's always, for everything with Howard, it's always self-serving. No matter what he does, anything that he does, it all flows back to him. And I guess maybe he thinks that there's nothing that Jay Leno, especially now that he's off TV, there's just nothing that Jay can do for him. You know, what's Jay going to do? Like have him come and hang out with him with his vintage cars? I mean, you know, you know what I mean? I mean, you know, what reference or framework does Howard, you know, what could he add to that conversation? Nothing.
Well, you know, like he had a feud with Jerry Seinfeld for a long time. Then Jerry Seinfeld, whatever, confronted him and just, you know, whatever they made up. But I don't think it was making up. I think it was a matter of, I'm not quite sure. Either way, the other commonality is Ellen's an asshole. Like she's a notorious asshole in show business.
And,
Rosie
and
O'Donnell
fake.
and Rosie O'Donnell's reputation is mud. If you read behind the lines and between the lines, Jay Leno generally has a good reputation. Is it because he's not dirty enough to be with a wig?
You know what? That's a very good point, because I think all of the people that you named, you know, a lot of them come across as fake and self-centered, and so maybe to a certain degree, Wiggy understands them more. Like Jay Leno baffles him because, you know, he makes a lot of money, and yet he shares the wealth and he spreads the wealth, and he's not an a-hole. Right. And you know, and that completely just baffles him. You know, I think you bring up a really good point. On certain levels, he understands a Kathy Lee, he understands an Ellen, and understands a Roseanne or a Rosie O'Donnell, excuse me. But so that maybe that's part of it.
Because Jerry Seinfeld, for all his, the way he carries himself, he's also a bit of a dick. I mean, he fucked around on a married woman with a married couple's wife, and she dumped her, I think, fiance. I don't remember if they were married, but maybe she was married at the time.
No,
and
she was. I remember that story at the gym and all that stuff. Yeah, I think she ditched. She was literally getting ready to marry the guy and ditched him because
ditched him at the altar.
Yeah, more or less ditched him at the altar. No, but you're right. I mean, I listen religiously to Gilbert Gottfried's podcasts, and he gets his digs in on Jerry, and they're all, they're always funny and then they're never anything vicious at all. But you can kind of read between the lines and see. I think because Gilbert has a really good impression of Jerry.
I love his Jerry impression.
Right. And he was saying that, like he has this story that he always tells that, he was doing that at the club.
Before Seinfeld was anybody.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the wait staff and the bartenders are like just bowling over with laughter. And then Jerry's like, what's so funny? Whatever.
It doesn't even sound like me.
Yeah, it doesn't even sound like me. Yeah, so like the guy can't even poke fun at himself,
I've loved Gilbert ever since I heard the story someone told where he did the entire rock opera as Tommy in the voice of Jerry Lewis as the Nutty Professor. Once on stage, the entire album. So we'll continue this clip and then we'll try to wrap it up.
All right.
You can take this to the bank. Jay Leno is a scumbag. That's what that means. He's a spineless maggot. Jay wanted to cut staff. He's embarrassed to do it. He doesn't want to come off like a bad guy. So NBC took the hit for him because, it's just a corporation. And so they came up with this thing with him like, oh, we'll just say, look.
This makes no sense. If Jay Leno wanted to cut staff, he would have fucking cut staff.
You stole the words right out of my mouth. I'm like, that does none of that made any sense.
Like, if he wanted to say, if he was smart, he would have said he did cut the staff, didn't like the bad press, so concocted this story that NBC wanted to cut them, then took a pay cut to hire him back so that he would, gain some face. But he doesn't say that.
Right. He's not smart enough to put that together.
No, and he's blinded by his hatred of Jay. So ultimately, when you are in a rage, you're not going to think clearly, and certainly not fucking 79. I think we might have to call him 69 from now on, because it's just I'm getting dumber listening to him.
Right.
We're cutting the budget. Did he cut any budget? The fucking Tonight Show makes plenty of money.
Yeah, I couldn't understand. I said, this is the top-rated late night show.
Jay wanted to get rid of some people, and he just can't do it. He's just like, he doesn't want to fire anybody. So now NBC fired them, and because he was forced on him, and I guarantee you, look, how much, he's like Mitt Romney, he won't release his tax returns. Show me how much fucking money you took out of yourself.
Oh, for fuck's sake, don't go down that road, Wig. You're the one that ran for governor and claimed you didn't want to disclose your income. When all you had to do was say, I make more than $250,000, which in the mid 90s was clearly the case.
Right.
So anyway, I don't want to go too much further into that because that's a 10-minute clip and we've done a lot so far. So the last clip I want to go through is, I want you to hear this one. Have you heard this about the Son of the Beach residuals?
No, and I'd love to, because I will make an admission now, and I feel bad really in saying this, but this is the God's honest truth. I actually liked Son of the Beach. I thought it was
funny. Man, this is like an AA meeting.
I know.
Okay,
yeah,
well,
this is Cary, and I'm a Son of the Beach fan.
Exactly. So this is Lisa G. We've got to thank Lisa G for this one.
All right.
All right, go ahead. Anything else, Lisa?
Yes, 5 long years after Son of the Beach Volume 1 was released on DVD, comes the announcement that the remaining 21 episodes will be released on November 11th.
No, please, I don't get paid a dime for that. Don't promote that. Oh, horseshit.
I love that.
Fuck that.
Really?
Yeah.
The series from the Howard Stern production company.
Paid?
I don't know, because I signed a shit deal just so I could get into that producing stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I don't get paid.
That's the worst production deal ever.
This is the funny part. It says the Howard. You go to Wikipedia, and that's not the Britannica, guys. It's not the be all and end all of. It's not like the Oracle of Delphi where you get the world's knowledge. But you type it on the side of Son of the Beach. It says the Howard Stern production company. Then you click on, and it just takes you to Howard Stern's page. But there is no production company in there. And so what it was he signed for other people to put up the money to do the show, and he took almost zero hit just to say he was a producer, and everybody else foot the bills, and remember at the time he was plugging it like crazy,
right,
as if he had a stake in it.
And God, but that is a pretty horrible, that is a pretty stupid. I can't believe Buchwald had him sign that.
He was afraid to lose money. Like it's like if you want ownership and you wanted to create a creator credit of it, whatever, but he didn't create it. That's the whole point. Other people created it. It was put forward through his production company. FX took the hit, and Fox, I believe, may have had a little bit. I think Fox and FX, if I'm not mistaken. And so they were the ones who took the responsibility for it, and all he did was brag about it. So it was really one of those things like Elvis getting FBI credentials from Nixon, even though he didn't go to school to be an FBI agent.
Well, you make a good point. I mean, you have, you don't get the reward if you don't do the risk. I mean, you're probably right. Buchwald probably presented them with a deal where it's like, look, Howard wants X amount of money. And they were like, okay, we'll give him that, but that's it. He gets nothing else. And they probably just took that.
Because he wanted to say, I'm a producer.
Right.
Just like I'm a rock DJ.
Right. Oh, yeah. I'm Robert Plant. Look, I'm a rock DJ.
Exactly. Well, the other thing is, and I thought about this real recently. In the Colford book, and I'll try to put up the what's it called, the screen cap. Don Buchwald and Howard always insisted on money up front when they got into later years, when they started getting really popular. So it was like, no, you're not going to give us. We're going to try to get away from needing ratings to get money. We want the money up front guaranteed, and it's your business. If we don't make a profit, that's on you, not me. Because and the ultimate expression of that was the Sirius contracts. Don't make me beholden to a fucking advertiser or ratings because I can't guarantee anything because I'm afraid. And that's ultimately the ideas of someone who's inherently has no confidence in themselves.
Well, true. And then the way TV and movie production and things like that goes. I mean, these guys are, they have projects and they're looking for funding, and it's like a risk reward type of thing. You
Absolutely.
Put up the money and you own a piece of it. And if it becomes successful, you get your money back and you get a piece of the profits. And so, and that concept, like you said, just seems lost on Wiggy, in that he, no matter what it is, he won't take risk.
No,
he refuses to.
And there's one last clip. I'll see if I can find it because it's about private parts. And this dovetails into that because some caller called in and asked him about the total. And I think I put it in the, what's it called? I put it in the coverage we did with the breakdown of the movie that we did with Benjamin. But I want you to hear this because he goes, I didn't get a piece of it.
What did private parts total out at? You never ever gave the figure.
I gave it 20 times. It's $85 million.
That's what it did?
Yeah.
That's good. I'm a big fan.
Shut up. And I didn't get the $85 million yet.
Yeah, he thinks that's in your pocket.
Right. All right.
Didn't put up the money, wants all the money for it. He's pissed off he didn't get it because it was his life story. Oh fuck! And he lied about the profits too. But you guys, if you've already heard that episode, you know that already, and you know the ins and outs of it, especially the after effects. So the aftermath, rather. So any closing thoughts before we wrap this up, dude?
Oh man, it's yeah, not really. I think you've said it all.
All right, guys, we hope you have enjoyed this. Thank you, Cary, so much for being a part of this. This is a 2-day recording. I hope it doesn't sound like it, guys. Sometimes the audio levels can get a little dodgy, but we're going to come back at you in the future with another Radio Karate, guys, by the way, now that Cary has got his acoustics settled, and we're going to be back with Daryl and Daryl and Wayne and hopefully Sean to get it together because I haven't rallied the troops just in quite a long while. So now that we can do it, we'll try to get one on. Are you up for that?
Yeah, man. It'd be great to have the gang back together.
Yeah. So we'll get on that one. And the theme for the Radio Karate is going to be unworthy Oscar winners. And that applies across the board. And perfect timing because we just had an Oscar ceremony that nobody gave a flying fuck about.
No kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks so much, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. No problem.
So many of these people, almost all of them that we see, are so poor and they are so black, and this is going to raise lots of questions for people who are watching the story unfold.
So black.
If they had been less black,
you know what, Halle Berry
cause as many problems.
Halle Berry would have survived.
Right. Why couldn't we have a town full of Halle Berry?
Look at how goddamn black they are.